I apologize for this in advance, but everybody watching should prepare to get about 2 minutes dumber.
I want to thank you for doing this today. I want to thank you for your compassion. You know, the reason I'm so excited to talk to you was because I wanted to understand the tragedy in your life and how you dealt with it. And you're the kind of leader I love because we're lucky to have you in the Oval Office and serving as the father of the country. Because if you're a good father to your family, which you are, I know you'd be a good father to the country. And I want to thank you for providing a calming influence.
I'm gonna pause it there for 1 second. I know I should let this play and then double check that I'm live on all platforms. You're a good father, and I know that you're a good father. What did he say there?
With it. And you're the kind of leader I love because we're lucky to have you in the Oval Office and serving as the father of the country. Because if you're a good father to your family, which you are.
If you're a good father to your family, which you are, I'll throw in the conclusion there. Not that I could pretend to know what type of father Joe Biden is or has been. I know what his kid says about him, that she thinks she might have been molested by him when he took showers with her at an inappropriate age. I know what happened to Hunter Biden as a human. And I don't say, the apple doesn't fall from the tree. But I would have questions as to what kind of father Joe Biden was. I've seen the videos of him sniffing children, and I have a question as to what type of father he is now. I'm going to let this play so you can all barf in your mouths, swallow the barf, barf it back up again, and then it makes you barf even more because you're swallowing your own barf. Disgusting. This is vomitous. I haven't listened to Adam Sandler, to freaking Howard Stern since before the pandemic. We had that Ford Explorer, and it came with Siri. Holy cows. It's like one idiot old man interviewing a senile old man. I didn't watch the entire interview, and I'm not going to. Enjoy this. Enjoy. Ugh. Wow.
I know you'd be a good father to the country, and I want to thank you for providing a calming influence, an organized administration post-COVID, getting that vaccine out. I remember what the world was like at that point, getting NATO, getting us to feel comfortable, standing up to Putin, the incredible
Can you believe
large
this crap?
growth in the jobs, unemployment rate down. I'll give you your greatest hits. The lowest uninsured rate in history. 4 out of 5 Americans are covered for less than $10 a month. Knocking off a few ISIS leaders, cutting the emissions in half. I mean, you've always been an environmentalist. Even the marijuana reform laws, enough with sitting there and fighting that battle. Respect for Marriage Act. What the hell is with people with this gay stuff? Who cares if someone's gay?
Very few people, Howard. Did he just give Joe Biden credit for the jab? I mean, this is like turning into a contentious point on both ends. You got one guy, Trump, who wants to take credit for Operation Warp Speed and the production of that garbage in, garbage out jibby jab. And then they're giving this schnook credit for the garbage in, garbage out jibby jab because they can't bring themselves to give it to the person who they should give it to if they think it was a success. Holy hell. I mean, it's like Trump derangement syndrome literally rots the brain. It rots it into a disgusting, moldy, brown avocado. That's what his brain, it's not a little pink foldy thing anymore. It's a brown, shriveled, rotten avocado. Let's let this play.
How is it affecting anybody? People in love, it's good, right? Love is good.
My dad said, we saw 2 men kissing one another in Rodney Square.
First, I didn't understand a word he just said. I mean, look, I know you got to get your sentences started sometimes, and the first sentence might be an or a but or a so. I didn't understand a word he just said.
When I was going in to get a license, I looked at him and he said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other.
That's it. That's how I look at it.
You know who deserves credit? The American people are relentless.
This is like someone slowed it down. Let me rephrase. This is like 2 drunk idiots, and you recorded the conversation, and then you slowed it down to 0.75 to make it even more preposterous. Howard Stern, how the mighty have fallen. Holy hell. You thought COVID got to him. And now you know what he's trying to do right now, because he credits himself or blames himself for having gotten Trump elected. Am I wrong on this? No, I think he faults himself for having gotten Trump elected because he did a podcast with Trump. And everyone said, well, he looked, very personable, and some people credited. I'm going to double check that while I let this play. And now he's trying to do the same thing with Biden.
American people are stepping up. Who are they vote for? They just never give up. We're the most unique country in the world. We really are.
We are, but I don't want to lose it.
We're not going to lose it, God willing.
Thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me.
Mr. President. Look at me sitting with the president.
Look at me sitting with Howard Stern.
Wow. I mean, you can tell people this is the most important event in your lifetime.
I'll tell them that.
By the way, Biden posted that as a win. An unhinged, demented, TDS-afflicted COVID fool, Howard Stern, and then 2 minutes of incomprehensible jibber-jabber from Biden. Trat, please tell me that I'm not going crazy. Howard Stern interviewed Donald Trump, and it was people... I feel like I might be misremembering something there. Did I say Alex Stern? I mean, Alex Stein? Howard Stern, not Alex Stern. But I need to go and make sure. We're live across the interwebs, people. I'm just going to go to locals. Locals, didn't Howard interview Trump? And I'm going to see this here. Oh, it's so wild. And you're like, everything about it is wrong. There's another one. No, it's not from the Howard Stern interview. This is from the that whatever they call it, the correspondence dinner. It's beyond what is otherwise. Oh, no. I did have a second highlight from this one. Listen to this. This is Howard Stern. This goes to show you the strength of his reasoning, his mental acuity, his political IQ. Listen to this. He's got the solution, people.
Can I tell you a fantasy I had? I don't know if you're going to debate your opponent.
Can't say his name. Can't say his name, Howard.
This is how I would handle it. Dude. Tell me if I'm nuts.
You're not nuts. You're stupid.
Tell me if this is accurate.
What's it?
I would stand there on stage with Trump and I would repeat over and over again, excuse me, please find me 11,000 votes so that I can win the election. I would just repeat that over and over again. And then I'd say to the audience, what are we debating? A man picked up the phone and wanted to say, fake the election, give me 11,000.
Look at this face right here. You tell me this guy knows what the hell's going on? This is elder abuse. This is dementia abuse. And he's taking advice from the biggest jackass on the radio now? Holy cows. What makes me feel sick is that I remember when Howard Stern came to Quebec and he said it was in 1996 or 1997. I remember I was on my way to Cégep at the time. And he used to be a champion for free speech. He used to be over the top edgy. And then he became the machine. And look at him interviewing this walking man who can barely string a sentence together.
I don't know how any American who loves this country, that's the end of the debate. You don't get to run if you're going to fix an election.
On January,
you get to run if you're going to fix an election.
January 6th, when they were storming the Capitol.
And a police officer died.
Yeah, a police officer died. Brian Sicknick, who they said was murdered by a mob of pro-Trump supporters, smashed in the head with a fire extinguisher, apparently had a stroke and died from what even the DC coroner medical expert determined was natural causes. I have my questions as to what might have contributed to his stroke, but set that aside. Liars, just idiot liars.
Say nothing. He was sitting in that office he was sitting there saying nothing. Dining area off the Oval Office for 3 hours and said nothing. I was supposed to make a speech on the economy that day. Instead, I made a speech I was in Delaware on that issue because I was elected president, but I wasn't sworn in yet. It was derelict. It was almost criminal. He did nothing. He just sat there and watched what was happening.
He didn't say patriotically, peacefully. He didn't put up 2 videos, said, oh, no, that was 2 hours into it. Liars. And I don't know who listens to Howard Stern anymore. I think that might be the saving grace. I think maybe our Sunday show gets more viewers than Howard Stern. And I'm not saying that because we're a massive show. I don't know who watches Howard Stern anymore. He once was the biggest draw for Siri. If he is now, holy crab apples, a lot of people are getting lied to in real time.
And now he wants to he calls them patriots and victims. And says he's going to pardon them all. If
they are victims. Many of them are patriots, and they all should be pardoned. And I would once upon a time said, even the violent ones, even the ones who committed bona fide acts of violence, at this point should be pardoned because the punishment undoubtedly did not fit their crimes. Holy crab apples. Howard Stern has jumped the shark without a doubt. Good evening, everybody. Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. This is our Sunday show with Robert Barnes. We are live across the interwebs, as we should be. We are on Rumble. We are at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where Suez Canal says, I can't take this, muting it until this part is over. My apologies. And then there's a picture of Joe Biden sniffing a little girl who doesn't seem very happy about it. Rogan is greater than Stern, says Dictum, 1,000%. Spewing lies about January 6th. Lies. They were violent. A police officer died. Yeah, a police officer died. When you get a lot of people together, people sometimes die from natural causes after you lied about what they died from. You know who didn't die from natural causes? Ashley Babbitt. You know who didn't die from natural causes? Roseanne Boyland. Didn't die from natural causes. They died from, one got summarily executed by a police officer, shot point blank. And then they claimed he's the hero. And the other one allegedly got beaten and stomped, trampled to death. And they tried to pass her death off as a methamphetamine overdose, not being able to distinguish between amphetamine, methamphetamine, and then there's a prescription drug that she was on, because there was an article that came out in the Epoch Times that said, yeah, she was on one of those ADHD medications, and it has something that ends in amphetamine. It's not a methamphetamine, but they can easily be confused, to pass her death off at the hands of police officers as a drug overdose, medical emergency. Oh, and people believe these lies. I'm not going to rail on someone any harder than I did today on Twitter. I think lessons have been learned. I am, however, going to put on blast the degree to which we have been lied to. Hold on. I wanted to start with this, but it's a silent video, and so it wouldn't have made much sense if I didn't explain what was going on. This is, from what I understand, relatively newly released footage. I know that I've never seen it, as relates to January 6th. Remember that insurrection, the insurrection where they stayed within the velvet rope in most places. There was some violence there, but there's a big difference between a protest turned a little violent, less violence than some hockey riots that I've been to. There's a difference between a protest that gets violent and an insurrection. I'll show you what an insurrection does not look like. And for those who are listening on podcast format tomorrow at, what is it? Viva Barnes Law for the People on Podbean. It's all a Viva Fried, Viva Barnes Law for the People. It's on Podbean. I'll tell you what we're looking at right now. Here's a screen grab that says lectern theft suspect faces charges. And we're watching a video of the alleged lectern theft. Now, if you're watching the video, look in the back. There's a guy walking in carrying a lectern. Turns around with the lectern, puts it down on the ground. I guess maybe it was a little... Oh, no, he's taking pictures now. People are taking pictures of him as he carries a lectern from the entrance of the rotunda. I think that's what this is. And he walks into the center of the rotunda. Now he's talking to somebody. That's the lectern guy, by the way. That's Adam Johnson right there. This is the theft. And he places the lectern directly... he might have overshot the center a little bit. That annoys my OCD. But he places the lectern in the middle of the rotunda, poses for a photograph. American flags behind him. This is an insurrection, by the way. There's a guy carrying a Trump flag, staying within the velvet rope. Nobody's throwing anything at the paintings. Nobody's desecrating, defecating, denigrating. Nobody's doing anything. Oh, lectern guy takes a picture, turns around, does something with his phone, takes some more pictures, talks to a dude. People are walking through with flags on weapons, as some people would say, because as I discovered in my interview with Jason Palmer, some people are under the impression that when they refer to weapons, and I'm putting it in quotes, on January 6th, they were including flagpoles. There was a pocket knife that was found there in a medical emergency kit. They were including as the weapons to commit insurrection, and these are all in quotes, people listening, pepper spray. Whoever had a baseball bat, who was it? It was Jake Lang, who, a baseball bat appeared. But yeah, the baseball bat's, that's an insurrectionary weapon right there. Then we have the guy, Adam Johnson, lectern guy, takes a few pictures, and he's walking off, and he leaves the lectern in the middle of the rotunda. That's it, people. And then there's some people who don't believe that he was charged with theft. That has been swiftly righted. It was in the charging documents. Theft of government property. There were people who believed he was violent. And then, by the way, this is the rest of the insurrection. I just fast forwarded it all the way so we can see a bunch of ants running around. Oh, they may have knocked over the velvet rope, and then there was a little smoke, which I presume was from when the cops got in. But yeah, there are people who believe that Adam Johnson got violent. And they could see the evidence and still not come to a different conclusion. And by the way, that evidence wasn't publicly available at the time. When they were telling us that this guy stole a lectern, they who charged him knew what they had in their hands. They knew that they had Rotunda CCTV footage. They knew it was a lie. Overcharge, coerce, extort a plea on lesser charges, and then you could say, we got him. He admitted to it. He's guilty of theft because he took a lectern and moved it 20 feet and then did a funny little posy pose of a speech in the middle of the rotunda. Oh, Lordy. He was saying from day one that he moved it just a few feet. I believe it was 20 feet. And I believe the statute might say that there's a certain distance after which it becomes theft, 20, 30 feet, whatever it is, or maybe 10, 15 meters. They had that footage. They had that evidence. They still overcharged him. They still put him in solitary for, I think it was 70 some odd days. He was in jail with a substantial amount in solitary. They still ran with the lie. The media says he stole a lectern. And then people still refuse to believe that they were lied to. They have false memory syndrome, and they don't want to admit that they were gullible enough to have been duped by the lies of mainstream media, of the government that's there to protect them. And then you got Howard Stern out there repeating the bullshit lie that a police officer died, suggesting it was as a result of what happened on January 6th. And you get Joe Biden calling them insurrectionists, suggesting that Trump did nothing. They deplatformed him. They took down those 2 videos on Twitter that he put up, telling them to go home. We are the party of law and order. He said it in his speech beforehand, and then you have a bunch of agitators, arguably feds and not so arguably feds, the Ray Eppses of the world, directing people into the Capitol. That's where our problems lie. Oh, my goodness gracious. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Whew. I don't feel any better. I don't expect anybody else to feel any better. But you might feel better if you haven't been feeling too good. If our sponsor of the evening, people, the good folks at the Wellness Company, hold on, I'm going to share the screen so we can see it. And you all know the Wellness Company. They have the contagion kits, I think they call it. You know, the emergency kit, the thing that you need to have when the poo-poo hits the fan and the government that you think is there to take care of you starts locking you down and giving you all the worst advice on earth. Can you believe that back in the day, they said, go get this jibby jab and you get a free burger. There's a lottery for it. If you go get it, you run the chance of winning $1 million. Oddly enough, your chances might have been greater of winning another lottery. Did you get vaccinated? I'm not even calling it. Did you get the jab? Either because you were coerced to keep your job, or you thought you were doing the right thing, or you had, nagging people who were also misled and duped, saying, do it, what's the big deal? Or you were perhaps naive and ignorant like me, and you said, what's the worst that can happen? Now you know. Are you nervous about the many health problems that have now been documented, despite the online Twitter army of people telling you safe and effective, even though they've stopped taking it, and even though 2 of the 5 of them suffered one of those small myocarditis things? If you're worried, you're not alone. Fortunately, there's help. Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Harvey Risch, Chief Medical Board of the Wellness Company, have formulated an unmatched supplement that may help with all of these issues. You guys heard me talk about it. The Wellness Company is the emergency kit. It's got the stuff that you might not be able to get during a time of crisis. They also have something called the Spike Support Formula. You'll hear smarter people than me say that it's the gold standard in combating spike protein, the toxic substance found at the root of almost all the problems related to the jibby jab. The Wellness Company doctors hear from people like you every day saying they've never felt the same since getting the certain unnamed medical procedure. So what can you do to get back to feeling like you used to? The Wellness Company's Spike Support Formula. You've got daily supplement to help you get back to feeling your best. Reclaim your health. twc.health/Viva. Promo code Viva, 10% off, and you get free shipping. And they are the good folks doing the good work. Standard disclaimers, actually, which I didn't say. No medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice. These things here, these wonderful things that you call super chats and Rumble, called Rumble Rants. YouTube takes 30% of that. If you don't want to support tyranny, if you want to support the channel and to have it be maximum value added to myself and Robert, Rumble Rants, Rumble takes 0%. So that's a more effective way of doing it. Support a free speech platform, and you more goes to the creator. For the rest of the year, 100% goes to the creator. You want to support us? Really? The most effective way is go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. $10 a month, $100 a year if you buy the entire year. A ton of exclusive stuff for supporters, a ton of open stuff for all members. It's a wonderful above average community. Now, also, by the way, I almost forgot to make the big announcement. I would be going back behind the Iron Rainbow on May 10th for a free speech protest rally event that's being held by Rumble. I'll bring up the thing when Barnes comes in, but we're going to have an event in Toronto where we're going to be sounding the alarm, raising the red flag as to the global encroachments on freedom of speech. On this panel, if you want to call it that, I'll be doing my it's not a panel. I'm doing my live stream from Toronto, where we will be vehemently protesting the benefits of our God-given right of free speech. Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr., me, Ezra Levant, David Menzies. I know I'm going to forget her name. I'm going to feel bad if I forget it. I better pull up the thing because I forgot a couple of other people. It's going to be amazing, so stay tuned for that. Now, while I pull that up, I'm going to bring up Barnes because I see him in the backdrop. Oh, have we got so much to talk about tonight. Barnes, bringing you in. Sir, how goes the battle?
Good. Sound okay?
It sounds good. I'm going to go double check while I do two things. But as you do that, Robert, and as I check, Titanic or Olympic, do I ask what the book is about? Are we going down like that Titanic, or are we succeeding like Mount Olympic? I don't know what that is, but let me see what the audios go. Go for it, Robert.
The book is a birthday gift from one of our board members that came out to the Vegas 50th birthday bash fundraiser for 1776 Law Center. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I don't know. Maybe it's a hush style book. Not sure yet. So but look, see, it was a very nice, one of the many generous gifts, and so I look forward to taking it in.
Robert, here I'm going to bring this up just so that I can make sure that I missed people here. This is from the Rebel News. Okay, so you got Don Jr., Ezra Levant, Sheila Gunn Reid, David Menzies, Chris Pavlovsky, CEO of Rumble, the Kimberly Guilfoyle, that's me back there, and Glenn Greenwald. So it's going to be amazing. And from what I understand, we're all basically doing our shows live from Toronto behind the Iron Curtain. Robert, it's been one hell of a week.
You're telling me.
I listened to your Bourbon with Barnes last night while I'm jogging, and it made my exercise twice as hard. I mean, look, I guess tell us what's on the menu. We'll start with the on the top one here before we go over to Rumble. But what's on the menu for this week?
We got the trial in Pennsylvania that I just actually did at last minute notice. But it's about bigger issues than just that particular trial. It goes to the right to open access to courtrooms attempting to criminalize recording open court proceedings in order to, quite frankly, cover up corruption in the legal system. We got farmers imprisoned in Pennsylvania. There are a couple of workers who work with the farmers, and they have a hearing now scheduled for Monday afternoon. We'll be getting into what the latest is on that case. The Supreme Court, Trump immunity was argued this week. The homeless issue and whether or not you can be put in prison for involuntary behavior, and the federal preemption over state abortion law was all the oral arguments this week before the Supreme Court. We got President Trump was in trial in New York, and his bail issue went before the court. And Good Logic continues to fight Joe Neerman to end the unconstitutional Trump gag order.
Let me stop you there so that people don't confound a dangling modifier. Good Logic is Joe Neerman. He's not. So,
yes.
Good Logic continues to fight. That's Joe Neerman. He's okay. Sorry, just make clear.
Exactly. Good Logic, like LAWGIC, very New York pronunciation of the word law. The Harvey Weinstein has his case reversed, his conviction reversed by the New York appellate courts. It's the folks involved in the Backpages case have a bunch of judicial acquittals issued. In that case, Arizona is busy following up on Georgia and Michigan and indicting people who for contesting elections. We have Hunter Biden claims immunity, and he might be right. And we have Pure Butter ain't really butter. And, of course, the case that I'll be attending to this week, Wednesday, in Beaumont, Texas, in federal district court. Brooke Jackson against Pfizer goes to oral argument on the government's motion to dismiss on the issue that apparently President Trump thinks is a big winner for him. He thinks that him championing the COVID vaccine is going to be the big issue that gets him to win over Robert Kennedy. According to his campaign manager, it should be his #1 issue. He's busy talking about it now repeatedly. We'll discuss whether or not that's the soundest legal and political strategy anyone's ever heard.
Well, in a very informal poll that I'm conducting on Twitter, it's only got 10,000 votes or 9,600. Do you think Trump is right for continuing to tout his perceived success of the COVID jab? 73.8% say no. So I'm going to share that with everybody so they can go let us know what they think. Holy hell, Robert. No, let me do 3 things first. I just want to read these because I brought them up. With all the lawfare going on, insane college protesters, and tornadoes, I need a serenity prayer more than ever. Cheryl, we got it, but I'm not sure that it was the way we wanted it. No, Biden. Oh, Biden said Alex Stern, LOL, and they put it out. I'm convinced Biden wins. That Twitter handle is trying to make Biden look terrible, not good. And the psychological desperation needed to ham up January 6th as an insurrection is only possible because of a repressed knowledge of summer 2020. How many hundreds of people got murdered during the summer of love? That's a good point, by the way, Ian Inkster. Robert, what I was going to say was this. It wasn't on the menu, and I don't know if it's going to it'll bump the whatever was going to be our first one. If Kristi Noem was intended to be a sabotage on Trump, what would she be doing differently? I'll preface this.
Apparently, she's taking the same kind of advice that Trump is currently taking from his campaign manager, longtime corporate lobbyist, Pfizer ties, Susie Wiley. Think of her as a Wile Coyote.
No, hold on. I think it was Susan Wiles, not Wiley, right?
Maybe it's Wiles. Maybe it is Wiles. It was one of the Wiley. It's at whichever one it is. But she's basically running the campaign now, and she's a longtime corporate lobbyist going way back. Pfizer ties, big food ties, big defense industry ties. Basically, the swamp is running President Trump's current presidential campaign, and she's been the one promoting Tim Scott. For example, her lobbying company has tight ties to Boeing. They got a lot of money from Boeing over the years. As it does Tim Scott, as did Nikki Haley. So but ideas like Kristi Noem are the ones being floated by a range of those kind of people, and it's as politically daft as some of the other advice that's circling President Trump at the moment.
I'm not partaking in that nonsense of post a picture of your dog if you haven't shot it. Growing up, we had a bull mastiff. We got him from a farm. We know that the farmer, when the dad of our dog got too old, he was a 240-pound dog. He took him over to a hole and he shot him and put him in the hole because the dog was too big and too heavy to move. I wouldn't do it like that, and I won't judge a farmer who does it like that. That being said, I doubt that person would have taken to Twitter or written in a book as a mark of character. We also had a dog.
Most people don't go around bragging. I mean, when farmers or others have to put a dog down, it's not something they go around and brag about in a book and brag about in social media. But she's that politically dense.
Oh, and everybody knows we had a bull mastiff who viciously attacked 2 people. And it was after my parents got sued. He attacked a second kid. Then he attacked a neighbor. And we had to put the dog down. We didn't shoot him. We all sobbed like babies, brought him over to the vet, and splurged the $100 to do it in a non-violent, peaceful manner. I can appreciate not everybody has maybe the financial luxury of doing that. But again, you don't brag about having shot a 14-month-old dog. It's not a puppy, and it's old enough. You'll know if it has a problem, but you can try to find a new home. I always said that dog that attacked people, he would have been the best dog fight dog, or he would have been like a great cartel dog, because the dog got turned on by the sound of like crying and predatory noises. He was something was wrong with him, but it's a traumatizing event.
Secretly, they're all wolves in disguise, right? That's what the dogs are, and the cats are secretly tigers in disguise.
Yeah, but you know what the thing is? Even a wolf would stop when it hears a kid crying. Like that dog that we had was a liability, and but for the grace of God, nothing terrible.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, and we put it down. It was it's devastating.
You have to at some point, and sometimes it's not economically affordable, but it's politically daft to be going around and bragging about it. I mean, it's just it shows the disconnect. She was never a good VP choice. We did a poll this weekend at vivabarneslaw.locals.com of who the board members liked, and I think their opinions represent a large part of the populist base of Trump's voter base. And their 3 favorites are are J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and Ben Carson. And right now, J.D. Vance is in the lead. We interviewed J.D. He would brag about his grandma owning a big gun, but not because they went and killed some little dog, right? I mean, that's the difference between politically clued in and politically clueless. Tim Scott would be a horrendous choice. Kristi Noem would have been a terrible choice, but I assume her candidacy is DOA at this point. But you never know. Apparently Trump is talking to DeSantis as well. We'll see if that's anything anywhere. But what Trump should take is the populist direction. Now, of course, people like J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and Ben Carson would tell him not to run on the vaccine, to in fact run on the Brooke Jackson case about how Pfizer lied to him and lied to the administration and lied to the American people and caused a lot of deaths. Right now, unfortunately, Trump is going in the other direction at the moment.
And it's not like I put out a tweet yesterday. Like, someone's got to grab him by the shoulders and shake him, or metaphorically speaking, slap some sense into him. It's so stupid. He thinks he's going to get in the good graces of the Howard Sterns, who, if they think the jab was good, is still going to give credit to Joe Biden, even though he had nothing to do with that awful Operation Warp Speed. It's so stupid and it's so terrible. I don't know. It's like someone's sabotaging him.
Yeah, well, his campaign manager really believes in it. I mean, his campaign manager was trying to shame and guilt people for not taking the vaccine and was blaming any COVID increase on people not being vaccinated. That's who she is. I mean, it's horrendous. I mean, she's bragging in Politico about how she's running his campaign. That, anybody in Trump's world could say, hey, Trump, turns out you didn't beat DeSantis. She did. Politico told me. Just let him know now and then. Hearing those, but he's chosen the swamp to run his campaign. She was the one that said he should stand by Mike Johnson when he's betraying the Republican base. She's the one who convinced him that he should, instead of continuing to oppose Ukrainian aid, recharacterize it as a loan and support it. I mean, these are horrendous decisions, and it reminds me so much of this exact time frame in 2020, March, April, May 2020. And we and a few of us were the only ones out there saying, don't get involved in the lockdown. Don't listen to Fauci. Don't listen to Birx. Don't shut down the economy. And I had a bunch of Trump supporters tell me, Barnes, you don't understand. This is 4D chess. This is going to be super genius. Everybody's going to celebrate him for it. He's going to get a bunch of votes for saving lives. I was like, no, he'll get all the criticism for anything that goes wrong, and he'll get none of the credit. And all they did was sink the economy and open up mass mail-in voting. And now he's considering repeating the exact same mistakes all over again.
Robert, if you saw me make a face like, ugh, it's because I just pulled up the Politico article to see what her name was. It is Wiles. I mean, Wiles. Did they put that picture up there thinking that are they trying to insult her, or did they think that makes her look like dark Brandon woman version?
The goal of this is a message to everybody in Trump world that she runs the campaign and that she gatekeeps for Trump. Tom Renz has been talking about this with Alex Jones. Other people have known this for a while. It's just when you see a piece like this is a way of broadcasting to the world, I run the show now. And because Trump generally doesn't like it when people make these kind of claims. So for her to make this kind of claim means that's the degree of control she has. That the degree of, to such, and this has been ongoing. If you are at Viva Barnes, law.locals.com, I've been talking about it now for over a month, really for months, that there's been behind the scenes a struggle concerning which direction Trump would take. And Wiles has been pushing him to go the establishment route, try to make amends with different aspects of the deep state apparatus, with corporate America, with big donors, and highlighting that he should run on how great it was that he did the vaccine. And there are others telling him this is a bad idea, that the vaccine did not turn out good, that you shouldn't take the blame for what happened with the vaccine, given that Pfizer lied and betrayed and violated their contracts. And she's won out for the time being. And it's showing up in the VP choice as well. She's the one pushing Tim Scott, for example. She's the one pushing out any kind of populist alternative. So and we'll see when the VP choice actually made how much control she completely has. But it's also not a coincidence. You suddenly saw Newsweek write a piece that said, why isn't Trump taking credit for his greatest ever achievement, the COVID vaccine? Right, with these bogus quotes from these people saying, "Oh, the moderate voter would really love it if Trump came out and celebrated the vaccine." That's planted by her and her people, because she knows how Trump digests media. And he's like, "Oh, see, independent confirmation. I should be running on Operation Warp Speed. I should be running on the COVID vaccine." And that's why he's highlighting that issue and contrasting himself with Robert Kennedy, saying, look at the difference between me and Kennedy on vaccines. Look at the difference between me and Kennedy on the vaccine issue. I mean, the one, you don't talk about house. You don't talk about rope in a house where there's been a hanging. It's an old cracker phrase, Southern phrase. And Trump talking about the vaccine as it relates to RFK helps RFK, doesn't help Trump. But he really believes it helps him. He believes it's a key winning issue. And he's planning on promoting it even more.
It's a funny thing you say that expression is an old Southern expression. There's literally, I mean, it's cross culture. There's an old Yiddish one. It says, "In the house of a hung man, don't ask where you hang the fish."
Yes.
Okay. I just, now I've drawn the connection, and I don't think I'm crazy. Robert, you'll tell, am I crazy? I'm telling you, they're telling you that they are in control of Trump's campaign, because the similarity here is not accidental. That is time versus political, telling you who the most feared, least known political operative in America is. Well, she's in control of Trump's camp, and by the sounds of it, making him say stupid things that can possibly cost him the presidency if he keeps it up, because nobody likes that stupid jab, and to keep touting it as a success, and not just Operation Warp Speed to play devil's advocate or to steelman it. It's not just devil's advocate. It's not just Operation Warp Speed. He thinks that was a success. And
a great success, his greatest achievement. I mean, and he won't, when people in his family, people in his political camp have told him that's not the case, told him to look at the Brooke Jackson case, he's refused. In fact, he gets angry at them. And I know that Trump people don't want me to talk about this, that there are people in Trump's camp who want you to know that Trump is Jesus. He's perfect, and he's never made any mistakes. And if you ever say he has, you're evil and you're a traitor and you're Judas. How did that help Trump when those kind of people were telling him to lock down the country in March and April and May of 2020? Did that help Trump? Did it? It didn't help the country. Did it help Trump, or did it guarantee his risk of losing?
Mm-hmm.
Without that, he doesn't lose. There's no chance he loses. But there's some people who think they help Trump by letting him jump off a cliff. I don't think that's a smart tactical strategy.
Robert,
if they say Barnes is a secret source for Robert Kennedy. I like Robert Kennedy. I make no bones about it. He's a great human being. But if I wanted to help Robert Kennedy, I'd be saying, hey, Trump, keep making the vaccine your big issue. Keep comparing yourself to Robert Kennedy on the vaccine. Keep comparing yourself to Robert Kennedy on the lockdown. In fact, don't debate him on the vaccines and the lockdowns. That's going to be a big winner for you, Trump. That's what somebody who wants to sabotage Trump would be saying.
Okay, we're going to get back to Trump. Or do we start with Trump and get to Pennsylvania? I kind of want to do the Pennsylvania one while we're on Rumble, and then we'll end on while we're on YouTube. Then we end on YouTube. We'll do the Trump on the other.
Oh
one.
Yeah, we got insanity everywhere this past week.
You got two insane trials coming out of Pennsylvania, right? The woman who recorded the court proceedings is also
three. I mean now three.
So you got Amos Miller. You got the two farmers, Rusty Hare and Ethan Wentworth. And then this woman who is now, I don't know if she got convicted, but she was standing trial for having recorded court proceeding in her divorce. Let's start with the really, I think what is really, really crazy. Ethan Wentworth and Rusty Hare, too. They're not farmers. They are technicians operating a company called No Bull Solutions, LLC, that offers ultrasound services to cows and or pregnant cows to see if they're pregnant.
And otherwise, they just help make sure that your animal breeding is working.
Now, they were hauled off 2.5 weeks ago, literally picked up by, I don't know, Cook County Sheriff or whichever sheriff.
It was Lancaster County and York County Sheriffs.
Lancaster and York County Sheriffs. Hauled off to prison, literally to prison. And on the basis of some warrant, I'll pull it up just so people can see how patently absurd it is, that was issued by the Bureau of Professional, what was it? What's the BPOA? I keep forgetting.
Well, Pennsylvania has its own state department because it's that kind of state. They have to have their own Department of State. And underneath it is the bureau that controls licensing for occupations, and underneath it is the veterinary medicine board. And that was these two guys have never been charged with a crime, never been prosecuted for criminal behavior, nothing like that, and yet they're in prison. In fact, they were not even named parties in the case. And yet that's how we're here. That's the insanity of it.
And so they were hauled off for 30 days for alleged contempt, uncured contempt, because they allegedly didn't pay a fine in a prior 2021, whatever professional investigation it was, for allegedly practicing veterinary medicine without a license by providing ultrasound services. I'll play devil's advocate and steelman, Robert. I looked up videos of cow ultrasounds. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't on the belly like with a human. They're sticking their arm up a cow's vajayjay with a sonar thing. I don't know if there's other ways to do it, but the ones I saw, I didn't even include in the video because I think people would say it's gross. But they're going up the butt with an arm and a prod. It's for identifying if they're pregnant. It's an ultrasound machine. They are, from what I understand, there's vets that don't even know how to use the machines because it requires a technician capability, not a veterinary license. But that's the allegation. They get hauled off because of this warrant that says, bring me the person, imprison them for 30 days for contempt. And you haven't been able to get in front of a judge yet. That's not an accusatory you. That is, say you get involved in the file because one of the wives calls you. I presume it's from the Amish connection, but I don't really know. Doesn't really matter. You're getting in front of the judge tomorrow afternoon. Are you going to Pennsylvania for tomorrow afternoon?
It's by Zoom. Okay. So it's going to be, so the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania took expeditious action upon our filing. It took forever to find out where and what the file was because the file was in secret. The file was sealed by the government. And so that's why I was like, how are they even in prison? Nobody understood this. Nobody understood how, why, what. And finally, we were able to figure out that there was a secret case being organized by the state government using the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth Court is a specialized court that handles civil claims concerning the government. They do not have criminal jurisdiction. They do not do criminal cases. So it's like, how in the world are people being arrested and imprisoned from the Commonwealth Court? And it appears the state misled the court into believing this was some form of civil contempt. In fact, they're still lying about that to the court. They're pretending there's a civil contempt order. Well, there's two problems with that. First is the plain language of the order. Civil contempt the way it's described is it's called coercive or contingent contempt. And what it does is it allows you to have the keys to your own jail cell is the language. Now, when it's a corporate entity, jailing imprisonment is not an option anyway. That you issue fines, but you say the fine will not be owed if you produce or do X activity. And X activity, whatever it is, has to be within your volitional control. What they did was they got an order of commitment, as like you would get from a criminal case that sentences someone to imprisonment for a period of time with no contingencies whatsoever. That by law is criminal contempt. When contempt becomes punitive, then it is no longer civil contempt, no longer within the jurisdiction of courts who only have civil authority. That's criminal contempt, and it has to go through all the same due process rights and substantive limitations as any other criminal prosecution does. And none of it happened here. And Pennsylvania is clear about all the preconditions. It gives you your right to trial, your right to counsel, your right to notice, your right to a hearing, your right to bail, all of which was denied them. And the way it happened was because the state tricked the judge into thinking they were signing something different than they were actually signing. And so and it shows you how corrupt the state regulatory officials are and how, unfortunately, the courts have been too deferential to them too often in Pennsylvania rather than carefully scrutinizing what they're up to. And so the court we filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, which has original jurisdiction over habeas petitions under the Constitution of the state.
And that is I call it an emergency, but that is a show me the body when you believe someone is being unlawfully held, and it should be dealt with on an expedited, quasi-urgent basis.
And then what we did is we filed a motion for immediate release with the Commonwealth Court, and all we did is attach the petition for writ of habeas corpus that was being filed at the same time concurrently with the Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania. That the Commonwealth Court, as soon as they got it, issued an order demanding that the state respond on Friday, and the state's excuse was to continue to lie. This is just continuous civil contempt, complete lie, just lying to a court because they got away with it so far.
Even still, Robert, it was for an alleged $3,000 fine that wasn't paid.
Well, no, that's not it. Apparently, it's still unclear what the continuous contempt is for. It appears to be a subpoena for documents that where other people would have constitutional rights involved that have never even been fully litigated or properly addressed or adjudicated. That's what the contempt is supposedly for. But again, if it's civil contempt, what has to happen is it says you will go to jail or A, B, or C. Now, there's problems with doing any kind of jail term. The normal is you say you owe $100 unless you produce this document and information. But that is not what this is. I mean, this is criminal contempt, pure and simple. They didn't follow the process. It didn't meet the substantive standards. The court doesn't have jurisdiction over criminal cases. They have to be immediately released by law, period. This was an illegal imprisonment, end of story. And the state officials were involved in federal civil rights violations of these two individuals, and they have seen horrific things when they've been inside. And they've had over a week to take remedial action, and instead they decided to keep lying to keep these people illegally imprisoned. And it's because the state agencies are captured and controlled by a corrupt group of veterinarian doctors. There's a corrupt group of veterinarian doctors who are using, and I say corrupt group because it's not all of them, because I have heard from vets in Pennsylvania that say this is not supposed to be happening. This shouldn't be happening. What is, you got this corrupt group of vets who are weaponizing their access through licensure of the state to go after their economic competitors, even when their economic competitors are not doing activity that's even subject to the license, because they want to monopolize certain aspects of economic activity in Pennsylvania, using the licensure as their ticket to do so. Problem is, the legislature didn't agree with them. The legislature, in fact, I've talked to and my team has talked to the people who are involved in writing these laws, and they said we specifically chose not to include ultrasound as covered by this for this reason. We specifically said farming is not covered by this for this reason. So they knew it. And what it is they just have a corrupt group of lawyers in the state agency who are willing to corruptly use their licensure power to go after people that have nothing to do with the license at all, because by law they don't, and corruptly use their access to the courts to mislead the courts into doing something that violates core constitutional liberties. And that shows you how out of control the state of Pennsylvania is.
But so you get a sheriff that locks them in prison. What does the prison condition look like in Pennsylvania? Have you been able to meet?
These are two county prisons, so it's the York County Prison and the Lancaster County Prison. But I mean, I won't get into details at this point, but they have seen horrific things on a daily basis. It's psychological torture. It's being kidnapped in very undesirable conditions and put into even more undesirable conditions. Anyone who knows I've brought many suits against jails across the country. I have many pending against my hometown over the Silverdale jail, where the local politicians bragged that it wasn't Silverdale Hotel, it was Silverdale Hell. These are people who were innocent, by the way, who have simply been indicted, not convicted, and many of my clients ultimately acquitted. But they deliberately do it this way. There's some politicians who think jail should be a place to torture people. And this is the power of the state at its most dangerous. The ability to take away all your liberties, kidnap you, and put you in horrific conditions. And that's what the state of Pennsylvania has done to these two men.
Now, hypothetically, it goes well tomorrow. Do they get immediately released and they can adjudicate on the rest of the claims in due time?
Yes. Hopefully that the court acts expeditiously. They're immediately released. And then there'll be two separate sets of issues. One will be figuring out whatever this nonsense is with the vet board trying to pretend that they're supposed to be licensed when they're not supposed to pretend. They're not supposed to be licensed by law, misuse and abuse of power. But the other is clearly going to require civil rights lawsuits. against. I mean, the lawyers involved knew what they were doing was lawless. I don't think they're immune for what they did. And it's the same with the regulatory officials, the same with the vet board people who are involved in this behind the scenes, the same with the private actors who are colluding to cartelize, if you will, cartel section, the part of the economy. In this case, in particular, they want control over farming and they want control over Amish farming. And they want to say you can't do basic Amish farming unless you have a vet license. That's their goal. And they know the Amish don't pursue higher education. So they know that means the Amish would have to depend on these outside people. And these outside people would then be able to dictate things maybe different than the Amish traditionally do. And they'd be able to line their own pockets at the expense of the Amish and put good blue-collar people like these folks out of business. That's what the goal is. It's patently illegal, patently unconstitutional, classic abuse of power. And the only question is going to be, will the courts be able to remedy this situation or not?
Okay, we're going to go over to Rumble right now, but I wanted to just read, let's say, 3 tips over at Locals. We got Rusty Gus says, Viva on Stern giving Biden credit for the vax. Please let him. Geez, as soon as Trump wins, they'll be turning it on Trump as a pejorative, and they'll have to get the facts correct for their own fact checkers. Idaho Tater 99 says, thanks for assisting Good Logic with his First Amendment fight, Robert. That's what you're doing. And then, Robert, have you ever heard of Vin Jiang, an international keynote speaker who talks and teaches about communications, how valuable are communication skills and communication skills in any profession? We'll get to that answer after the show. What we're going to do now, we're going to head over to Rumble, end it on YouTube, go on to the other Pennsylvania madness case. I'll catch up with some Rumble rants in a bit and the remainder of the super chats over there. So vivabarneslaw.locals.com and Rumble. The pinned comment is up on the top. Ending on YouTube, over to Rumble now. So that's one crazy case coming out of Pennsylvania. The other one is I thought it was a little less crazy until I heard the details on Your Bourbon with Barnes last night. It's a woman who was held in contempt for secretly recording a court hearing in her divorce case because she was getting the impression.
It wasn't contempt. It was a separate criminal prosecution.
What was it? What was the charge for the criminal prosecution?
Unlawful recording of a court proceeding.
Okay, fine. So she records a court proceeding that itself is being recorded, that itself is being transcribed, because she doesn't think the transcription is being faithful to what's going on during the hearing. And she's confirmed accurate when the transcription is not accurate to what she has on a recording. And she challenges the accuracy of the transcript. And they say, no, it's accurate. She says, no, it's not. And I guess divulges her recording and then gets faced with criminal charges. And she had a trial last week, right? And they wouldn't postpone it. You asked for a continuance because she mandated you on the Saturday before the trial. My one question to you is this. It was being recorded. It was being recorded itself. Did she try to ask for the audio recording of the court and they said no? Or do they pretend that they're not recording it and only transcribe it?
They pretend they're not recording it. In fact, the judge took the stand. Well, the judge involved in that case was a witness in this case, to give you an idea how insane all of that was. And pretended that recordings were very rare. He did, like, there's 2 cameras looking at me while I'm asking him these questions in the courtroom. I mean, it's clear to me that the judge was conspiring with the court staff and the detective's office to cover up the criminality and the corruption of a powerful, politically connected law firm in Pennsylvania. Because the divorce was a very amicable divorce. I got to meet her husband, sweetheart of a guy. They get along great. They had an agreement about how to work things out. There was no problem whatsoever. They still, hang out together and so forth. But the law firm that was representing him was the one that was up to some nonsense. And so she realized they were up to some nonsense. She was from Estonia, but she was born behind the Red Curtain. And escaped there to America. So she knew not to trust people in authority just because they were people in authority. And she realized these lawyers are up to no good. And consequently, brought her own court reporter to the court proceeding, saying, Judge, I have issues. I would like to have my own court reporter here, not just have the official court reporter. Judge like, nope, you can't do that. You can't do that. You're not allowed to. We have a monopoly on truth here in Chester County Courthouse, and it's only our court reporter that's allowed to record. And claimed that there was no recording of it, just the court reporting it. Even though I even asked him, I said, the rules talk about recording. There's something called a court recorder, I'm like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, that kind of routine on the stand. Most of the questions he wouldn't answer because it was all deliberative privilege, judicial immunity, deliberative privilege, judicial immunity, deliberative privilege, almost as if he had something to hide. So she exposes this, the corruption. This will tell you all you need to know about this trial. There were two objections that were the most strenuously made by the prosecution, and that the judge was eager to affirm in both cases. The first one was, I asked the detective on the stand, it's like you heard on the recording that my client was raising the issue in the courtroom before the judge of whether or not the lawyers in that case were involved in illegal, even maybe criminal behavior. Did you investigate it? Objection, objection, objection. No, you can't talk about that. Can't talk about that. All right. Then when the judge gets on the stand, I ask him, I'm trying to establish what the rules of court are because that's an exception under the recording rules. And just to establish the Constitution is clearly a rule of court, right? Judge wouldn't answer that question straightforwardly. So I was like, well, Judge, when you got sworn in, after you got elected, you took an oath, right? He's like, yes. And was that oath to the Constitution of the United States and the state of Pennsylvania? Objection, objection, objection.
How can they possibly object to that question? Was the objection sustained, or was it?
Yes.
But on what basis? That's a question of law.
In this case, so I make my appearance on Monday. Ask for a continuance. Ask for a 2-month continuance. This was my first time I was involved in this case at any level. As for a 2-month continuance, this is a 2nd-degree misdemeanor. It's only been on the books for like 8 months, 9 months, something like that. As for 2-month continuance, denied. Come back and say, well, what about a 2-week continuance? Denied. Well, what about like any time you allow it all, even if it's 2 hours? Denied. You have to be here Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. to start the trial. So the prosecution refuses to share the discovery with me, saying, well, you haven't been admitted in yet. And they try to object to me being admitted into the case. As well, when I get there, I've had no sleep because I had to take the red eye to get there. Didn't have much sleep all week because of the trial. Get there, and the judge explains to me at one point, he goes, by the way, I've made some pretrial rulings on what can come in. And I go through that, and it's all the judge saying, denied, denied. Every witness she requested, denied, 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 denied. Every subject of matter that she wants to approach, denied, 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 denied. Every area of cross-examination that she wants to use, denied, 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 denied. Basically, all of her evidence was prohibited. I mean, I was like, all right, I mean, there's show trials, but come on. I mean, the Trump show trial is embarrassment enough, but this is taking it to a whole new level. So I was given very little, tiny little space in which I was allowed to ask questions, allowed to present evidence, allowed to present argument. We asked for some basic jury instructions, denied, denied. The justification defense, denied. The defense on whether or not intent applied to all of the elements of the statute, denied. It was, I knew it was going to, I've been through these kind of cases before. So it didn't upset me or bother me or anything else. And my client, could have taken a sweetheart deal to have it all go away. But she was like, she's like, then this will never get vindicated. People will be able to be subject to what I was subject to, that if you expose corruption, they try to put you in prison for doing it. And she's like, yeah. And she's risking 2 years in prison because she thinks this is important for everybody to know what is our constitutional rights. Do we have a constitutional right to record our own court proceeding or not? Or does the court get to declare a monopoly on truth of what happens in a courtroom? Does a court get to limit and prohibit what gets broadcasted from what is supposed to be open court proceedings? And to give an idea, I was only able to find 3 prior examples where anyone has ever been charged with this. In all 3, the government got rid of it and dismissed it once independent legal organizations got involved and said, by the way, this law patently violates people's constitutional rights. The judge presiding over this case thought that there was a warning on all the courtroom doors prohibiting recording. The warning says no such thing. It talks about not having your camera on so that you don't have flash issues, distraction issues. The judge admitted on the stand he never found her in contempt, never told her that she couldn't record, had never cited her in any way, shape, or form. What I think happened is the official narrative that they wanted to spin was that the court clerk's office decided to enforce this rule and ran over to a detective and said, get her prosecuted. I suspect the judge is the one that's behind it, because they were going to great lengths to prohibit what I could ask him questions of. And this narrative didn't really make sense to me. And the judge was playing a little bit of evasive games on the stand. And what I think you have is a corrupt courthouse in Chester County. And I bet this was a law that was passed in 2018 that was solely meant to prohibit people from trying to take photos of witnesses and then attack them in the public sphere in order to intimidate them. The law originates from not recording jurors so that juror secrecy is protected. It has nothing to do with open access to the court of recording your own proceeding when it's already being recorded by a court reporter. Who's magically does. Like, for example, they wanted to introduce the transcript without bringing in the court reporter. I was like, bring in the court reporter. Might just have a few questions. Saying, how did you get this one wrong? How did you get all the key facts wrong that covered up the corruption of the law firm? Just curious. Do you ever get any business from that law firm? Court reporters are dependent on big corporate law firms and courts for their business. And I know many great court reporters. So any great court reporters out there, it's not an insult on your profession. This is a recognition of the reality that an ordinary court reporter is not going to be inclined to report things in such a way that means they will never get paid again or have a job. And that's why we should allow, and the Constitution, in my view, requires the right under the petition for redress of grievances, the right to open access to courts, freedom of speech, expression, association, and press, to be able to record and broadcast court proceedings. And remember, this came up briefly in the Amos Miller case, where the local Lancaster court system, this wasn't the order of the judge, he was just saying this is how the law is interpreted in Lancaster County, that even media couldn't take notes without advance permission. This is about a rule that was intended to deal with juror and witness intimidation is now allowing courts to have monopoly on the truth of what happened in a court proceeding under threat of criminal prosecution if you expose it's not really the truth that's being reported.
Well, the fundamental thing that doesn't make any sense is if the court is recording it already, then it makes no sense that an individual could not also procure the same type of recording that the court is recording. A video, yes. Photographs, there's a number of reasons why. But the idea is like the all-party consent rule. If it says this is a recorded call, you don't need to ask them for permission to record it, and you step into court. I can understand in some way, and I thought maybe she overplayed her hand before saying that she recorded it, asking for the official recording of the court. But if they didn't have one, then she's left with zero options in terms of disproving the accuracy.
And the justification defense, which we'll get into a variation of that called the necessity defense that came up in the oral arguments at Supreme Court on the homelessness issue, is that if you're facing two evils and you choose the lesser of the two evils as your course of conduct, and in particular in Pennsylvania, it's a statutory defense. So it's right in the statutes that if what you're doing actually better serves the purpose of the statute than doing the opposite, then you are completely innocent and can't be criminally convicted. And that's what she did, right? The point of court reporting is to make sure the record is accurate. She was not like, what they don't want is people using a court reporting, like having it out in such a way to try to intimidate somebody, harass somebody. She did none of that. They all admitted they didn't even know she was recording. So there's no intimidation of any kind, couldn't be of any kind. That instead, it was to promote accuracy and transparency, better promoting the statute than criminally prosecuting her would. It's the classic definition of a justification defense. But we were prohibited from making that defense at trial.
Yep.
Prohibited from the jury even knowing the justification law exists. But, credit to her because she was willing, she's gone up against a system that has done everything possible to crush her for simply asserting her constitutional rights to the degree that they're willing to lock her up for years. And she's been willing to stand by and stand up to it all the way through, and is willing to take the only way to get full vindication is to take this up to the Court of Appeals, the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, then the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and potentially in federal civil rights cases, because she has tried to bring all kinds of legal actions. She's tried to sue the judges in a whole bunch of different settings, saying this is illegal, please stop it. And they've all said, no, you got to go through your criminal case first. And they use abstention and comity and all these things that aren't supposed to apply. Abstention is somebody's screwing me over. I go to state court, and then I decide to go to federal court. And they're like, hey, the state court's already going to decide it. So out of respect for the state court, we're going to let you. It's not there for when the state court is the one violating your rights. And federal courts know this, but they love to protect other judges. They don't like to get involved with anything bad with other judges. They tend to stick their head in the sand. And it's an institutional weakness we have to beg judges not to be. Imagine a court saying, okay, so you're saying this person's violating your rights? We would love to hear your case, but you got to go back to the person violating your rights and ask them. I mean, come on. This is a crop. The original federal civil rights laws, number one target, corrupt judges and rogue sheriffs. That's who it was. Nuremberg Code violations. Will you watch the movie Nuremberg Trial? Who's on trial? Judges. So, and that's deliberately so. And I know how tempting it is when judges have the power to weaponize that power to protect their fellow judges. That's exactly when they can't do it. And so we'll see. We'll be taking it up on appeal. We have robust issues on appeal, not only the big constitutional ones, but we have about 20 other ones because of all the witness evidence excluded. I apparently, so I do an offer of proof. I always recommend this to young lawyers out there. If you get evidence shut down, make sure to make an offer of proof that says, here's what I would have been able to prove if you hadn't stopped that cross-examination, if you had allowed me to call this witness, if you had allowed me to present these documents or exhibits. And sometimes that's the physical copies of the documents, exhibits to be put in the record. But in the case of verbal testimony, you just say, here's what the testimony would have been. Here's how I believe it would have been material and relevant. Here's how I would have used it in a closing argument. Judges are often shocked by this. Prosecutors are too, because almost nobody ever does it. And I went through, but I don't think the judge was happy about it. But I was like, yeah, Judge, I just have a little offer of proof, for the record.
This was not in front of a jury, right? This was a judge trial, a bench trial?
No, this was a jury trial.
Okay, so when you do this offer of proof, do they kick the jury out so they don't hear? Okay, fine.
Yes. Okay. And I just went through, all right, first, all the witnesses that could have produced evidence that, in fact, she was exposing corruption and thus it fit the justification defense that was present here that were all excluded, and that she was never told in any way, shape, or form that it was illegal to record. So she couldn't have had the criminal intent, the criminal mens rea under these circumstances anyway. I mean, if she thought she was committing a crime, she wouldn't have told everybody that she did it. She was the one who, she thought this was within her legal rights, her constitutional rights, which every witness admitted on the stand ultimately anyway. But there were other witnesses that could have complemented and supplemented that and provided some real, including, other than the judge, all the other witnesses to that court hearing that day, somehow they didn't call for trial. It's like, who is the victim here? The victim is corrupt lawyers who can't even take the stand because they don't want to be cross-examined on their corruption. So that's the secret backstory to all this. And by the way, this is a law firm that's connected to the Biden family, just to give you an idea of the scale and scope of who they are. Everything I laid out in the secondary shutdown is all the cross-examination on all these witnesses, because they either currently now, or do face risk of lawsuit for violating people's federal civil rights, including the court clerk, the detective, and the judge himself, including potentially not having immunity, because some of these acts are not really judicial acts, right? Judicial act is you're adjudicating something. A rule about how your courtroom is governed isn't really a judicial act, is it? So they're all sweating bullets. I wasn't allowed to ask any questions about that. Like, isn't it the case that you would profit from a conviction in this case, right? Couldn't ask that one question. It was ironic when the judge was giving, remember, jury, take into consideration whether there was any source of bias for any of the witnesses. That's the one thing we couldn't ask about. But documenting it all. So we got good offers of proof. We got jury instruction issues. We got evidence exclusion issues. We got Fifth Amendment issues, because she would have been able to testify if I'd had more time to be able to prepare. So we got continuance and due process components there. And so we have a very robust, and then we have the jury instruction on on the intent element and on the justification defense and on the theory of defense. And then, of course, we have the big, this is all unconstitutional, what's taking place. And the only question is, are Pennsylvania courts going to continue to turn a blind eye when the people doing the illegal behavior are the courts themselves?
1,000%. I'll answer that question for you in advance, Robert. And good luck pounding against that wall or carrying that rock up the hill, Sisyphus. Robert, we're going to go into the other court corruption in a second. Let me do a few things here. My ancestors are from Lancaster County, and my wife and I were going to visit there sometime soon. Should we be afraid to enter the county or state? Kafka-esque, says Basil Beshkov. Oh, that was Pasha Moyer. Chad Smith, if Trump is some political genius, in quotes, we cannot keep giving him passes on the vaccine. Is he, quote, the man, end quote, or not? It is stupid and will lose him votes. Agreed. Viva, you should interview or do a sidebar with Barnes with Danielle DiMartino Booth. Hold on, I'm going to just screen grab this. The Federal Reserve worker, her book is amazing. Screen grabbed and let's do it. Oh, by the way, tomorrow, Robert Patillo's coming on. The man that I was on Jenna Ellis with, and he's a Democrat who actually believes the Democrat things. Tuesday, Tommy Robinson is coming on. That should be like 1 or 2 o'clock. Wednesday, there's going to be someone else. It's going to be a big jam-packed week. Robert? I was going to say one thing first.
I have a jam-packed week.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. What are you doing? Because I know what you're doing, but tell the world.
So Monday will be the oral argument via Zoom with the Commonwealth Court. I'm really hopeful that they take. I mean, they've been very expeditious, so I'm really hopeful they correct this and fix this and don't try to double down on an illegal order of imprisonment. But we'll see. I am hopeful, and then then I go fly Monday. Right after that, I fly down to Beaumont, Texas, prepare on Tuesday with my colleague Lexus Anderson and Warner Mendenhall and Jeremy Friedman on behalf of another great conscientious individual who stood up for a lot of people at great risk to herself, and Brooke Jackson, because Wednesday afternoon in federal district court in Beaumont, Texas, will be the government's attempt to completely suppress all information and all fraud complaints against Pfizer once and for all. Brooke Jackson's case is the touchstone case and is the case that will decide whether Pfizer can be held accountable for the fraud of the COVID-19 vaccine and all the harms it has caused. So we'll be there. That'll be a rather so that it's been a busy time period. And then I'll probably meet up with a client on Thursday and then back home. But so may hang out with a buddy of mine in Austin, Texas, who, by the way, has been complaining about the same thing concerning Trump of late. So in Brooke's cases, we filed our opposition. You can go to iambrookejackson.com. It has all the court proceedings and pleadings and documents. Their argument, in my view, Pfizer's argument and the government's argument is patently frivolous, in my opinion. This is about when the Biden administration is corruptly implicated in the fraud itself, then the question becomes, is that grounds to deny the American people the right to get justice and vindication in the court through a qui tam and False Claims Act? And it is, to a degree, a novel question. It has never been presented in this manner before in legal history. Now, I know that other people will say, well, Barnes, that no judge has ever been willing to stand up to the Justice Department when the Justice Department has demanded a dismissal in a qui tam action in American legal history. But it's never been as overtly and openly corrupt as this dismissal request is. And so we'll see what the court does. But, it'll be a privilege, and it has been a privilege, and will remain a privilege to represent Brooke Jackson. And no matter what happens in the district court, if we are for whatever reason shut down, we'll take it up to the Court of Appeals. We'll take it up to the Supreme Court of the United States, just as I've done on behalf of Robert Kennedy and Children's Health Defense on the COVID vaccine being authorized for children. For whatever reason, somebody got in Trump's head that he should just accuse Kennedy of lying about vaccines. I'll be honest, that's a patent ridiculous lie by Trump. It's a stupid one too. Anyone that knows Robert Kennedy, you can disagree with Robert Kennedy all you want. You can say you love Trump more than Kennedy. Absolutely. There's 100 reasons why somebody could believe that. Plenty of energy workers that definitely feel that way. But that's different than just going out and lying about him patently, and just saying how much your audience is willing to buy lies. because the Robert Kennedy has opposed the COVID vaccine from the very beginning. He was the person who led the petition against the COVID vaccines authorization. He was the person who led the first lawsuit that I filed on his behalf in Children's Health Defense against the authorization of the vaccine when they started out with the military. Then we filed it right away, challenging the authorization of the COVID vaccine for children. That right now is pending before the Supreme Court of the United States. We filed our petition for cert this Monday, posted it at vivabarneslaw.locals.com after I got back from the trial, so people can read about it there. So we'll see. But, the question is, will the courts allow the corruption of the Justice Department prevent the public from ever getting any accountability or responsibility from either the governmental agencies or Pfizer concerning what has been the most destructive, damaging public health disaster in the history of the United States?
I just want to live long enough to actually be able to live through the history where they recognize that, admit that, and this becomes sort of the bird flu debacle of the 70s. Robert, I just before I forget, actually, share screen. Geez Louise, Dexter Taylor, the man that I interviewed about a week and a half ago, was convicted of assembling firearms in his New York apartment with lawfully procured kits from the internet, delivered to his address, ordered through his name. And there's a petition to remove the judge. Speaking of the idea, there's no constitution in this courtroom. Well, apparently Judge Abina Darke in this case said, don't bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. The Second Amendment has no place here. This is New York. And I'm not a fan of petitions.
Let's be honest. That's a very honest statement about New York courts at the moment.
Yeah, at least she said the quiet part out loud. And there's a petition to remove her from the bench. But this is a judge who, in no uncertain terms, said, we understand that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but it has no place in the courts of New York. And I'm feeling that people are thinking the same thing for Pennsylvania. So I'll give everyone the link to that if anyone's interested. Link here before we get into the Trump stuff. And I flash back to what you said about the corrupt judge Chutkan out of New York. Her father's from DC. Her father happens to be from Ghana, and the idea, and I was saying this, it's not a racial thing. It's not it's not a. There's nothing about it that's prejudiced.
Well, it's nothing to do with race. It has to do. I prefer Americans judging America.
Well,
it's that simple. And I understand that's a little bit of a parochial prejudice, but I want people that grew up in America, who have multiple generations of growing up in America, who have a certain commitment to America. Then, I'm not saying exclude anyone who isn't. I'm just saying what we're seeing is judges that don't grow up that way. Not all of them, but a disproportionate number of them seem to lack respect for basic American constitutional traditions. And that may be because in the country and where they grew up and where they came from, where their parents or grandparents came from, it wasn't part of their traditions. And I'm sure people in any other country of the world wouldn't want an American coming over and judging them. You know what I mean? So it's the same principle.
Certainly not.
You want people who respect and know and who grew up in and were nurtured in multiple generations of the traditions you believe in.
Certainly not a Texan. They wouldn't want an Alabaman coming into their country and with their Second Amendment gun tote and whatever. And it's not racial. It's nothing other than cultural. In that, you get a Canadian schnook who doesn't respect the Second Amendment, who's grown up thinking you don't need more than 5 rounds for duck hunting and you don't need a gun for anything but hunting, and then coming in here and saying, well, I'm going to impose my Canadian view on firearms into your legal system when it doesn't reflect your 300-year-old constitutional appreciation for the very reason that was there. So I appreciate it. It's very interesting. If anyone wants to sign the petition, go for it. Dexter Taylor, last I was in touch with him, is in Rikers awaiting hearing on whether or not he gets bail or bond pending appeal. And he was convicted and swiftly whisked off to Rikers Island for unlawful possession of an unregistered firearm in New York State. Robert, we're getting into Trump right now, but I wanted to do one thing first. Let me do one thing first so we don't fall too far behind. And we want to thank everyone for all of the support. And there's no but to that. Let me bring this up and see how fast I can get through this. Okay. Viva, how dare you put on the sexual acts on Rumble? I cannot believe you showed Howard Stern giving Sleepy Joe a tongue battle. Ugh. You got the engaged few. If a tree falls on the Stern show, does it make a sound since nobody was tuned in to hear it? Sean 47, Trump should pardon January 6th on day one. He should make that announcement loud and proud now. Also offer settlement of $3 million each for the government overreach and actions day one. Niboosh, here you go, Viva. I think the 3 brackets means I'm Jewish on the interwebs. Hello, would a legit second Trump term have a legal authority to tear down the taxpayer-funded wall of Beijing Biden? from his Delaware home and rebuild it around Mar-a-Lago, DD 2225. Freddie, white pill has got to be the Arizona rancher mistrial, waiting on the next move. Good job defending O'Keefe. We're getting there, people. We're getting there, Sean Joe. We're talking O'Keefe in a few minutes. PR Designer 02. Tulsi Gabbard is a great choice. I hope she picks it's Vivek for me. She's smart. She loves the country more than the rhinos. I agree with that. Sportfish. Robert Viva, have you reviewed the unredacted search warrant that Judge Cannon released? I haven't. Julie Kelly's covering it. It's amazing. Fart Whiff. Stream is down for the whole bunch of people. I hope it's back up now. How do we get Trump's current campaign manager removed from her position? Just dig deeper, says T1990. King of Biltong. Good afternoon from Anton's Meat and Eat. Free shipping with code VIVA for your biltong or biltongusa.com, antonusa.com. Biltong high-protein snacks whilst listening to informative podcasts. Thank you very much. Then we got to T1990. Thank you very much. I'm going to skip those because we got to get back to the show. Let's actually, just before we get into Trump, let's talk James O'Keefe, Robert. Look, I will never
like a certain coordinated effort is afoot. I just want to be on the record. I'm sure it is a complete coincidence that they're targeting James O'Keefe on the eve of James O'Keefe disclosing even more corruption in the intelligence community in the deep state of American political power.
I do not disclose private messages that I have with people unless I'm authorized or unless they call me a liar. It hasn't happened yet. Or unless someone tries to fuck with me and say that I didn't say something that they said. Okay. With that said, in public stuff that you can see a rift within the conservative community. You can see people picking fights.
Well, it's a lot of the same people that have, let's just say, a sketchy history in general.
Well, look, I'm not saying anything that's not public. Kyle Serafin's Twitter handle says recovering FBI agent. And I said it in the video, it's kind of funny. Some people are like, well, once an FBI agent or once, intelligence, always intelligence. I was like, okay, if he's recovering, some people might say he's back on the wagon or off the wagon, whatever it is. The scandal, I'm not playing the video because I don't think it was fair to publish this video, is James O'Keefe is at a party and allegedly some woman who seems to be very inebriated, and I say seems to be because I'm not convinced this wasn't a honeypot from the beginning, a very inebriated woman who has a French accent. I don't know that she's from France, but I think that she is because I can tell accents. Talking about her boobs are implants from Venice and her lips are implants from Croatia. I don't know. Her whole body is imported in one way or another. James O'Keefe understands that this woman works for Chuck Schumer because she said she did. He comes over with his camera. There's some other guy in there bragging about the size of his penis who seems equally drunk. It's disgusting. It's dirty. It's crass. It's not my scene.
But he's James O'Keefe reminds me of Ralph Nader. So, most people, some chick that's drunk that they're approaching is talking in a certain way.
From France.
There's a certain way you'd go there. Where does James O'Keefe go? Oh, I wonder what undercover information this provides. That's where his brain goes. It's just locked in. It's like when Ralph Nader exposed all the fraud with the car companies because a buddy of his died when he was in Harvard Law School. That's why he hitchhiked across the country to find out why things were not as safe as they should be on our roads, and he wrote unsafe at any speed. So GM targeted him, and GM kept trying to do honeypots. Problem is they didn't understand Ralph Nader. So, he wouldn't respond to the traditional honeypot the way anyone else would. So here's James O'Keefe. Somebody's coming up clearly like a potential, at least, honeypot or trouble in some other ways. And his first thing is, I wonder how we can get independent undercover information of the public. That's where his brain goes every single time. These people are bombarding him with texts and emails and DMs on Instagram. And, a lot of honeypots all over the place on Instagram. And all O'Keefe is doing is like, which one of these can become our next undercover reporter? And that's just where his brain goes. No,
it's. I mean, not to say it's like me to some extent, where I go look at a dog or a bike, and then don't notice that there was an attractive woman behind the bike or the dog. It's like, but so this woman is like seems to be sloppy drunk. She says she works for Schumer. She's in a bar, and he starts recording. There's another guy. He's this is not my scene, but this is the scene. Drunk idiots doing drunk things, hooking up and having sex. That's what it is. And so Kyle Serafin publishes the video with a very cryptic sort of, the woman was half his age. She needed an ambulance by the end of the night. And this is what you do when you compromise your morals to get the story. And I read that caption. And I'm like, fuck, did he ply her? Or that's the word, like get her really drunk to the point of danger? Did he assault her? And I watched this 14-minute video of James in my mind, pretending to be drunk when he's not, because James is not an idiot and can't let himself slip up in public, knowing that everybody wants him, honey potted at best and, flower potted at worst. And he's recording this video, and it's nothing except this one guy bragging about the size of his penis. This girl's coming on to the guy, kiss me, touch my boobies, and he doesn't publish the video. And then apparently, from what Kyle Seraphin said, this is what a lot of you employees at OMG have been apologizing for, which I doubt is the case. And then he publishes the video, and he blurs out the face, or the face is blurred out. But if she's a French woman in her 20s working for Chuck Schumer who gets drunk and stupid drunk at bars and sleeps around, everybody's going to know who she is from that video. But the video, bottom line, showed absolutely nothing in terms of improper conduct from James O'Keefe. Certainly nothing that
really
would warrant.
Strikingly so.
No, it's like,
you know what I mean? I mean, most young men in that position wouldn't have that much exculpatory information. The mere fact that O'Keefe was saying, "Hey, go through my DMs on the Instagram, see if there's anybody helpful," tells you that he was not up to anything inappropriate or improper. The fact that tons of women were targeting him all the time, welcome to that world. Complaining to him about the fact that there's women that do that. I mean, that's not his fault. His whole focus was, who could we use as an undercover reporter to get more truth out there? That's who James O'Keefe has been now for 20 years. He's not going to change. And everybody that ever gets on a campaign to lie and smear him only lies and only defames themselves in the process.
What was it called? The Unsuspectables. Like, I just noticed a few people. There were 3 or 4 people in tandem doing it, and attacking James, and it's very bizarre. To be
part, like, if you went back, I raised the issue when similar coordination was going on during the Project Veritas time period. Similar coordination, and they lined up with other aspects of some other campaigns at the time, and all they're doing is they're proving themselves as untrustworthy. Even if they're being completely sincere, they're too dumb to trust, right? I always say, like, either the person's corrupt or dumb in these kind of circumstances. Either way, that's a no-go for trusting him in the future, right? I don't care whether the reason why you're not telling the truth is because you're too stupid to know what it is, or because you're deliberately doing it. I can't trust you in the future as a narrator on anything.
One of them accused said he, made allegations of sexual abuse or criminal misconduct. And I said, what criminal misconduct?
Waiting for what's this big scandal involving James O'Keefe? It turns out he's so obsessed with his job that he'll ignore hot chicks trying to do something else. And he's just like, please, can you help me undercover?
No, but Robert, the biggest accusation, he offered to buy her a drink. We didn't actually see that happen. She was underage. I was like, underage?
You can even see the stories. I mean, you can see, like, they'll probably get some undercover tape of James O'Keefe in a hotel room with some hot model, and all they'll be doing is spending all of his time trying to convince her to become an undercover reporter.
Anyhow, so it's bullshit. It's obviously, I mean, it obviously has to be.
At this point, they should just quit. Everybody's figured out the game. So just quit and don't discredit yourself in the process. These people that are doing this, that's all you're doing.
And apparently, James O'Keefe is coming out with the biggest story, he says, of his career as relates to information that the CIA was withholding from Trump, and it's next week. And then this happens this week. Okay. And Steve Baker, I like him, and I don't think I have reason to dislike him.
Baker's a good guy, but I get why he's trying to support some of these people. He's done good work, really good work on the January 6 cases. But those people are wrong. So it's not the hill to die on, Steve.
Steve Baker said, "Is chivalry dead?" I was like, "Oh, okay." Is the worst accusation against James O'Keefe is that he wasn't chivalrous? Because that makes investigative journalism a little hard if you have to be chivalry with the people that you're.
His form of chivalry is risking his life to do undercover reporting that exposes major corruption in our big institutions. That, to me, is real chivalry.
Perfect. Now, Robert, let's get to the Trump immunity argument before the Supreme Court. I don't know if you listened to it. I listened to it. And again, I'm not as optimistic as many people out there. There were some judges asking the proper questions. There were some judges making the proper analogies. And then the lawyer, I was going to say Sig Sauer. His name is not Sig Sauer. I don't know what his last name is. What his first name is. It's Sauer, S-A-U-E-R. S-A-U-E-R. Trump's lawyer, when he was pressed on whether or not certain allegations in the indictment were presidential acts, private acts, And then the question becomes whether or not they're presidential warranting immunity. But the lawyer conceded that certain accusations in the indictment were private or purely private acts performed by Trump. And I didn't understand it. It seemed to me like a massive judicial admission that's going to come back to bite him in the ass, because even if they say you got presidential immunity for presidential acts, you don't have presidential immunity for personal acts. And he conceded that there were personal private acts alleged in the indictment as relates to the attempt to, I forget which one it was now. It doesn't matter. But flesh that out for me, and flesh it all out, because I was not as optimistic as many people were, but I think I might just be getting too pessimistic over time.
Well, I mean, most of the questions confirmed how I came in. Now, I agree with you that the oral argument could have been much better. I thought the reply brief was very good, and I thought we would get more of that at the oral argument. Now, I didn't hear all of it, but from some clips, as you mentioned, I thought they didn't best prepare for certain of those answers, and understanding the sort of the political dynamic this is in. And so I've had the same complaint about Trump's defense in all of these cases, that they were late to the party on a range of arguments that they could use, and that they've often allowed the other side to win the rhetorical argument when there were easy pushbacks. For example, I mean, like on the military thing, the military code prevents and prohibits someone from doing an illegal military order of assassination anyway. But, there was an easy answer to that question, both at the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. And they actually reference it in the reply brief. Mm-hmm. They say, well, can Sotomayor wanted to repeat Judge Pan's routine of, can he order the assassination of someone? And you have to be aggressive there. Say, well, Your Honor, the president who appointed you did precisely that. Barack Obama ordered the assassination of an American citizen by the United States military without any due process of law, who was, by any definition, his opponent in a political and any other sense. Indeed, all war, as described by many of our great military scholars, is politics by other means. What is it? It's ordering the murder and death of other people. So, I mean, this is nonsense. Well, can you do this? No. Now, you may be right that President Biden may be trying to do that to both Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy as we speak, but you have to push back hard. You can't let that nonsense hang out there.
But they would have said in response to that, well, killing a suspected terrorist is in the best interest of the country.
It precisely opens the door, and you go right back to the key issue. Who has the power to decide? If we give the power to decide to individual prosecutors, they can determine they think what Barack Obama did was a crime. They get to prosecute. Or is it that decision can only be made by Congress through the impeachment process? Because the question is not what is to be decided. It is who to decide it. Because the who is what this constitutional question is all about. And that was what was missing from the oral argument. It was presenting that one person may think what Trump did was election fraud. Others may see it as doing his constitutional duty. Some people may see what Barack Obama did as protecting us and doing his job under the Article 2 as commander in chief. Others might see it as murdering and assassinating his political opponent. So some people may see what Bill Clinton did as foreign diplomacy. Others may see it as covering up for his personal scandal with Monica Lewinsky by bombing a bunch of people in a foreign country at the time he was under major investigation. A president who was involved in politically supporting many of the justices on this bench. So that the question then becomes who decides, and is it private? Is it political? Who decides? Only Congress can decide. That was always the answer. Only Congress can decide, because otherwise you're giving that power to weaponize the legal process as a means of extorting every single president. For example, what if Iran requested the extradition of Barack Obama? And what basis would a U.S. court have to refuse to do so? It's assuming there was an extradition treaty and so forth, putting that argument aside for the moment. It would be that he did it while he was president, and whether it was personal or political, a decision can only be made by Congress. Whether it's impeachable is subject to Congress. Until he's convicted by Congress, that is the political protection for what our founders said: any allegation against the president is inherently and necessarily political. And that should have been the answer on all of it. Sadly, it was missing from the oral argument.
You're a very smart man, Robert, because it's the exact, I mean, the idea would be then to say, yes, he would have no presidential immunity for purely private actions. He would have presumptive presidential immunity for presidential actions, but who gets to decide what is what? And it's not up to DAs. What I loved is that infused in their question, they did bake in, he assassinated his corrupt political rival. Nobody picked up on that. They did infuse into that question. He's not just killing, I was going to use a real name, it doesn't matter, but not just a good political rival, but a potentially corrupt one. And nobody picked up on that. Nobody talked about that. I've been I'm feeling stupid because am I oversimplifying this by saying everything should be presumptively presidential, and unless he's impeached and convicted, nobody can do anything. And then everyone's like, well,
it has to be that. And the way to think of it is who decides. Everything's about who decides in the end, because anybody can second guess somebody's intent, somebody's action, the rest. That's why we say who decides matters most. And what we've always said in the courts is that the courts never get to decide. The courts never get to second guess the action of the president of the United States. That's what Marbury versus Madison says in plain language and plain text, going on more than 2 centuries from the very founding of our constitutional law in this country. And that would have been the better answer. I unfortunately don't think that will end up even in the opinion, even though it was the legally correct path to take. However, I do think they will give a massive, they will say any presidential act is immune.
Yes, but Robert, like I don't want to get too cynical or conspiratorial. They're going to say that. But Sauer said on the record, I acknowledge some allegations in that indictment are purely
correct.
personal.
I mean, he's opened the door to remand, more evidentiary hearings, more issue. The lower courts get to make another ruling. What was personal? What was political? What was private? What was presidential? And then that will go all the way back up to the appellate food chain.
Okay.
And maybe the process of that will be so confusing, chaotic, and contradictory that the Supreme Court will then recognize what I proposed was always the solution, to say, you know what? We're not really good at this. We should leave this to Congress. Only Congress gets to decide whether it's presidential or not. This is why in the Presidential Records Act context, they said that's a non-reviewable decision of the president. The president gets to unilaterally decide what's presidential and what's personal in the context of keeping records. And we don't get to second guess it. Same standard, same analysis should apply in the impeachment context of the president and indictment context of the president. Now, I think there were some people that came away thinking they weren't going to give much criminal immunity at all. I think what I've been predicting, you saw in those questions. Who the justice to pay attention? My prediction months ago was that Barrett would be unreliable. All the people that still want to yell at me for saying Barrett would be unreliable, watch her become unreliable again. The 3 liberals will be unreliable, though they'll be tempted to take in some form of immunity because they know this can bounce back around to their side sooner or later. But the key ones to watch, the 3 conservatives, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas, all of them ask questions that suggest they don't like where these cases are going. And for Alito and Thomas and Gorsuch, it's just a matter of common constitutional sense and how to interpret and apply the law. Gorsuch had some great rhetorical questions in that regard. So the key to people to watch were Kavanaugh and Roberts. And my prediction was that Kavanaugh and Roberts are so disturbed by how all this looks for the judiciary, care less about Trump. They care about the impression of the judiciary, that they would ask politically inclined questions about, does this really practically work? What you guys are doing, what we're unleashing? And by the way, that's precisely where they went in their questions. So that's why I think they will say president is immune for presidential acts from any criminal prosecution, if not successfully impeached and convicted for those acts. And then the question will become what's private and what's presidential. And we'll go through a whole nother round of these. But that's kind of a precondition. Like, I don't know how the New York case goes through with a trial and the Supreme Court comes through with this decision, then it basically negates and it requires a mistrial in that New York criminal trial because that judge has never done that assessment. He assumed the president is never immune for anything, presidential or otherwise. And so they're going to have to start from scratch. And the point Mike Davis meant is that means they're going to have to start from scratch in all these cases, and that their determination is probably going to be subject to another round of appeals. In other words, we're not going to get any criminal trial that can be upheld before Election Day.
I wish, like, I think it's a quasi-original thought because I hadn't heard anybody think of it before, but in the oral arguments, I forget who said it, but they said, look, all that you have to do is have a Senate prepared to acquit a president on impeachment, and you've got a president who's above the law. And I'm like,
no, that's a president that is respecting the law, because that is the law.
Well, no, but they're going to say, like, oh, so
above a law that's being enforced.
Well, but my thought was even different. It's like, all right, so your concern is that you're going to have 66 or more corrupt senators who are going to acquit a president who murdered the chef, because
that's my point way back, was that if you have a tyrant as president who the Senate is covering for, you have bigger problems in your country.
But it's actually even, like, it's even more basic than that. Okay, so your concern is 66 or more corrupt senators to acquit a president for murder, and you're not concerned about one corrupt DA or AG who's going to go after the president?
Bingo. Yes, exactly.
So, like, I'll hedge my bets on 66, 67 or more corrupt people.
That distills the power question very easily. One corrupt DA, really anywhere in the world, because one of the things I would have added, that presidents would be subject to extradition under this interpretation. And we have extradition treaties with all kinds of countries. So are we saying that that we would have to honor an extradition request? I mean, there's a bunch of countries that would like to put George W. Bush in prison, Bill Clinton in prison, the Barack Obama in prison, Joe Biden next in prison. I mean, have any of us thought about how are we going to turn down that extradition request? How are we going to do that? Unless the president is immune and can only be extradited or criminally indicted if he is successfully impeached and convicted by the Senate, as the Constitution calls for.
I'm going to bring this one up because I just want to bring some shame onto Sean Patrick, New Hampshire. Not that girl. I put up with Viva to hear Barnes. Sir, if I didn't just warrant your continued appreciation of my intellectual input, nothing will warrant it in the future. So now, but people
in between people saying, I don't know why Viva has Barnes on. He's just a Kennedy hack. He just hates Trump, and he suffers from TDS. And when you read 8 years defending Trump in the court of public opinion, defending him on election cases, defending him on all these. They don't remember that.
When we reach 20,000 people in real time, there's going to be people on both ends who hate both of us.
Yes, exactly.
But now people say
doing something right. Then
split it down. You say 5, 4, 6, 3. But the question is going to be, what's going to be the scope of the immunity? Like,
it'll be all presidential acts unless you're successfully impeached or convicted. That's my prediction.
Oh, from your mouth to God's ears, I hope, Robert. I want to bring this one up now before we go forward. This is not ragging on me. This is James O'Keefe. Are you saying that James O. is totally clean and moral, says blessing beyond measure, blessing beyond, then follows it up with, you're missing all of the other dirty James O. stuff?
Who cares? Who cares? I'm a chivalrous guy who risked prison, death, bankruptcy, to expose corruption and fraud in our system.
I have been
if he wanted to be corrupt, folks, he would have already cashed in and be gone by now.
But other than this, I've been following James since 2018. The bird dog woman.
I've been following him since he got arrested in Louisiana when some friends of his wanted me to come down and help him out, and he ended up going a different route. But I've watched him ever since, and he has some of the most admirable character that exists, just like Robert Kennedy does. That I'm not going to change my opinion because politics or somebody else wants me to.
No, it's not saying. Like, what are you suggesting that James O'Keefe did that's so dirty and so immoral that I would have to second guess my belief in who he is?
To make stuff up. It was like a lot of allegations against Trump. It's like my disagreements with Trump over the vaccine, some other issues. Trump's always been a stand-up guy, though. His great virtue is his backbone. Sometimes he puts it in the wrong place, but his great virtue is his backbone. And remember all the allegations against him. I mean, all these allegations, assault and all this other stuff. That was all nonsense. If you understood Trump at all, you knew that was nonsense. So people shouldn't take the bait on the latest smear campaign against some individual.
Actually, let's get into it very briefly. The New York hush money, I say it in quotes because I believe it's all bullshit.
When he was the victim of extortion. The Stormy Daniels extortion plot that Trump was a victim of, that he's currently being criminally prosecuted for.
Well, but it also seems like Michael Cohen might have been involved, not in a pay-to-play, but rather a fabricate-to-get-paid scheme where he would find scandals.
Because he was a career criminal. That's who Michael Cohen is. I think he objected to you or someone else calling him a convicted perjurer.
That was
like convicted fraudster. Fraudster,
no. It was Phil Holloway called him a convicted perjurer, relying on one of my tweets, and then I guess Michael Cohen didn't go after me because I don't have a bar license for him to threaten. He threatens Phil Holloway's bar license. And I'm like, hey, Michael Cohen, you dumbass. Arthur Engoron in his ruling called you a convicted perjurer once and said you were convicted of perjury once. Everyone, Jim Jordan called you a convicted perjurer. You are a convicted perjurer. You're a liar, a scumbag, a dirty, dirty individual who reflects poorly
and by
on
the way,
all the other.
Told Trump not to rely on Cohen and to get rid of him sooner than he did. But I got criticized for that too at the time. By the way, you know who Michael Cohen tried to hire?
Michael Avenatti. I'll just guess that. No, wrong guess. Oh, shut the front door. Who else?
Like, I don't think so.
That's bringing back a memory as to who else Michael Cohen might have tried to hire. Oh, I think Dershowitz had a similar anecdote. I'll have to remember.
I'm sure.
Michael Cohen is the man who gives other people bad reputations. I mean, and lawyers,
every kind of crime known to man, and he hustled Trump because he was cheap. Trump took the bait on that, and pretended to be a fixer. So here's the problem with fixers. They often have to create problems that they say they fixed for you that often are not problems for you. That, Trump, I'll quote Trump. The Stormy Daniels accusation as Trump, have you looked at her? I don't think so. And if you know Trump, that's sincere. She's not Trump's type. But
I would think that, like, a man who I have no basis of comparison. I have a germophobia, and a man of Trump's stature who says, "Do I need to have
extreme germophobia?"
Well, I know, but that's
over it to shake people's hands because he has huge.
No, so he's gonna worry about shaking people's hands, and he's gonna
date a porn star. No. If you look at the people that Trump has dated over his lifetime, they're models. But they're high-end, respectable models. They're not porn stars. They don't look like strip club dancers.
Well, and the thing is this. I'll say this. Like, I once went to. I'm not a.
For the record, I'm not saying anything negative about strip club dancers. In case
no, well, that's it. I don't want to come off as a holier than that. I'm not a prude. I'm not a whatever.
No, it's not prude. It's just that's not his type. There's no way. Well, it's like the lunatic. The lunatic. I mean, it's like no way. I mean, I think Trump put this in one of the depositions. Where one of the lawyers, and he's just like, not my type. He's like, look at you. He was talking to the lawyers.
That was
definitely not my type. I'm not against you. I'm just saying.
No, but I went to a strip club. I like to say twice. The first and the last time it was for a bachelor party. I found it very sad. I saw bruises on the woman's. It was in Montreal on St. Catherine Street. I hated it. I just went for the sake of it to see Stormy. Like Stormy Daniels, we see pictures of her. You see her giving interviews. You go watch her movies. She's just another one of the million people doing porn. It's dirty, it's disgusting, it's like it's cheap, low class, but nobody ever goes to watch what she actually does. She just comes off as like the holier than thou victim of a pay to play scheme.
Well, you know who's probably going to be a witness for Trump in this case?
Don't say it just yet. Who could possibly be a witness that would be interesting, controversial, surprising? Michael Avenatti.
Yes.
Okay, fine. That was. I feel I would have been stupid if I missed that. Do you think Michael Avenatti and or Michael Cohen have had relations with Stormy Daniels?
Cohen definitely. That's Cohen's type. That's his Cohen's type, right? He's the low end strip club kind of personality. That's everything about the guy. He's a swarmy mid tier criminal. And not Avenatti. Avenatti's a sophisticated criminal. So with more limited taste.
Oh, yeah.
However, she decided to screw him over, and if you know Michael Avenatti, he tends to reward you in kind. Well, and so he's gonna know all the dirt, and he knows what was going on because he was part of it. He knows that this was all an extortion scheme by Stormy Daniels.
When he came out on that Ari, whatever the guy's last name is on MSNBC.
Poor guy, Ari Melber. He's like, you thought he had an easy hammer Trump call from jail. And it was like, hold on a second, what?
Oh, you know, when Avenatti comes out and says, it might turn out that I learned things in my representation that she was lying to me when I said she was a victim. Yeah.
He's a smart, sophisticated guy. I've never said he wasn't smart and sophisticated. I said he's going to end up disbarred in prison because of the nonsense he was doing. But he is a smart, sophisticated guy. He goes all the way back to that Coca-Cola. What was it? It was some ad that promised an airplane, a military plane. He's actually connected to that, which is fascinating in this documentary. So he goes way back. I knew Avenatti before he blew up on this stuff. Did not personally, but knew him reputationally because we overlapped in the same legal circles in LA. That was actually a very skilled trial lawyer. I mean, he was a great narrator for closing argument and all the rest. He just saw his ticket out of jail and his cash quick ticket being anti-Trump because he saw how much the media were suckers. But he's going to know all the fraud behind the Stormy Daniels case.
Well,
Stormy Daniels.
And
so that's going to be a major problem. And now he's in prison for forever. He has no incentive to just hold back.
No, but some people are going to argue that he has an incentive to lie because if Trump gets elected, he can pardon him because he was convicted on federal fraud charges. That's
charges. True. And they could try to bring that up. Don't you want President Trump to get elected so he can pardon you?
But
this is the same guy they cited as a perfectly reliable person just 3 years ago. Remember Brian Stelter, future president.
But it's not just that. They can make that accusation against Avenatti. But if
Pepsi, where's my jet, by the way? Somebody in the chat. Pepsi, where's my... there's a Michael Avenatti appearance in that documentary.
Oh, that's funny because I remember that story. But no, they can accuse him of bias, like, oh, he wants Trump to get elected so that he can get a pardon. He's going to have written receipts between him and Stormy Daniels about how she lied to him.
He has a very good memory in that regard. So that's probably why Stormy Daniels doesn't want to be a witness in the case. Didn't really want it. She just wanted to shake down people for some cash. She didn't want this to happen. So that they're going to have some issues.
People in the chat on Rumble are saying Michael Avenatti didn't kill himself. Don't put that juju in the universe. We need him to testify. But Robert, the other thing is people are watching or listening, live tweeting, reading the inner city press, Michael Russell Lee, and they're saying, what the F is he even charged with here? They're basically turning tabloid. Like, first of all, one thing that I've learned from this trial, National Enquirer is not reliable news. Holy hell. Thank you for the news. They're trying to make it look like David Pecker, who was the CEO or owner of AMI, owned National Enquirer. By the way,
was really involved in his own extortion type scheme. I mean, that's really what he kind of admitted to on the stand. He pretended that he was doing this great, like, public service or some nonsense. The scam was go and buy up stories that could embarrass someone and then get them to pay you. He pretends it's always the other way around. Let's just assume it wasn't always the other way around. He got ticked. He bought up some stories that Trump was like, nah, I'm not going to. That's a bunch of garbage.
He bought up false stories. And the question was, why did you buy up the false story of the doorman, Sajudin or whatever? Why would you buy it up if you knew it was false? Well, we didn't want other people to get it. Bullshit. You actually bought it up to try to just get paid for it. Otherwise, you run it even though you know it's false.
A very thinly disguised extortion scheme.
And
that's what that was. And that's why he's spinning that story. He's spinning on the stand.
Well, and not just that. That explains why he signed the non-prosecution agreement back in 2018. Of
course.
Holy shit,
Robert! This has been a barely hidden secret about. Maybe Grobert, Eric Hunley, and Mark Grobert will do on their Freeform Fridays or America's Untold Stories. Because he worked for one that didn't do this as much, a major tabloid. So like Elephant Boy and crazy stuff like that they wrote about. But I think he's familiar with this world, that this is commonplace, that this is one way you sophisticated. In Hollywood, there's a whole bunch of people that all they do is extortion. That's how I knew Stormy Daniels' story was extortion right away. The first people she was talking to in L.A. were people that I was aware of in the extortion industry. So it's like, okay, I know where this is going. For example, a bunch of trannies in LA, all they do is they make all their money by extortion. That's all they do. They try to get someone in a compromising position, and then they extort them.
Keep your pecker in the pants,
and for the record, I didn't say Eddie Murphy by name. But that have been victimized by this. But there's a whole subword. I mean, I've had so many crazy cases. I've ended up discovering all these crazy things. And one of them was, oh, this is how the scam works, right? The way you do it is you get a newspaper or someone else to buy the story, and then you go to them and say, okay, hey, they have this. I have this story. What do you think we should do with it? You don't say, give me 50 grand or I'm going to publish it, because that's criminal extortion. You say, well, what should we do with it? Could I help you in some way in making sure these lies don't get told about you in public? And you get a check written. That was the scam. And sometimes he's working for these people to bury stories. 9 times out of 10, it's the other way around.
Holy hell. I'm sending out a tweet when I can get time to finish it. I was sitting there thinking, Why did Pecker sign a non-prosecution agreement with the state or the government? I first thought it was only because he was making a contribution in kind to the campaign by running favorable stories, but it might have been because he was running an extortion campaign.
And they would never call that part legal campaign contribution because of everyone it would implicate, right? Then you have every media company that is committing crime. Then you have every big tech company committing. They're not willing to go that far when it comes to their ridiculous interpretation of campaign finance laws. The backstory is they know that's the whole thing with this case is Trump is a victim of an extortion scheme involving Stormy Daniels, involving convicted lawyer Michael Avenatti, and involving the National Enquirer, who are all complicit in a scheme to extort Trump. But they're blaming Trump for being the victim of the crime.
I want to bring this one up, Robert, just because it's not because it's annoying, but it really does highlight some. Let me see here. Where did I lose it? Oh, well, someone said Michael Cohen was Jewish. And you know who else is Jewish? Yeah. By the way, let's point him out. Michael Avenatti's Jewish. I'm Jewish. Like, if you want to draw those connections, there is definitely statistical overrepresentation that you cannot blame people for noticing. Oh yeah, David Pecker's Jewish. I mean, yeah, okay, you're in the world
that's
of
an unfortunate last name, isn't it?
Dude, between Pecker, Wiener, and all of them, and what the hell they get themselves into, there is statistical overrepresentation in politics, media, and law. So deal with it, but it's also on the other side. The people calling it out, putting them on blast. I don't invoke my Jewishness because I think it would be sacrilegious to do it because I'm quite sacrilegious. But whatever. Yeah, if that leads you to new conclusions, enjoy it. So that's wild, actually. That's wild.
I mean, I think even this show trial results in some sort of guilty verdict. The Supreme Court comes in and says any version of what I'm talking about, they have to throw out the whole case because they failed to do that proper presidential private comparison prior to presenting it to the jury. And if any evidence of things that he had presidential immunity for were presented to the jury, then the jury is irrevocably tainted in such a way you have to throw out the verdict. It's all done. The judge just wants a conviction, so he thinks it will hurt Trump in the general election. That's it.
Oh, Grobert said worked for Weekly World News, an AMI Pecker property. Oh, I'd like to. Oh, dude.
Oh, really? You got to start sharing the dirt there, Grobert.
Dude, oh, no.
I'm spilling the beans.
I'll get Grobert on at some point this week. We'll talk news. But people have said, like, what the hell is even the crime here? Like, all right, so he paid for favorable coverage. He paid for attack, or he tolerated attack opposition, and there was someone eyes and ears on the ground. Oh my goodness! Now everything makes sense with David
none of that
Pecker.
Even makes any sense. It was solely they were there to extort him, and they were mostly unsuccessful in the extortion, which tells you that the allegations were preposterous, and that Trump wasn't going to pay money to all these nonsensical things.
Holy hell. Karen McDougal, did he do anything with her, or is this just he paid her to?
Well, now she might fit a different type. That's all I'll say.
All right. Well, end of story. But everyone all of a sudden starts pretending infidelity.
Trump referred to her as a nice girl. That's how Trump put it.
Okay. I don't care. I wouldn't judge someone, mortally for that. I wouldn't do it. I would expect to get murdered by my wife, and rightfully so. I'm afraid of germs and disease and all bacteria. But my goodness. Okay, so it makes more sense. The trial continues next week. Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee to check out.
Yes, doing great work, and
dude, he's a machine.
Support, Good Logic, aka Joe Neerman, as he tries to get the court to release to end the gag order,
ungag the Trump.
I reached out personally to Professor Dershowitz and Professor Turley to try to get them involved. Some people asked me about my involvement. What Joe was told was that he needed basically a high-ranking liberal Democratic professor type like Dershowitz, or that they didn't think the courts would get involved. So that's why he's reaching out to those people. But everybody should support this. I mean, I'm hoping Steve Bannon gets involved. I mean, there's people who could join the petition who say, I support the petition. I want him, Charlie Kirk, other people in the media could say, hey, Breitbart, Daily Wire. They could all say, hey, we want this gag order ended for our purposes. They could join and support it. There's lots of ways to support it. But Joe's done lion's work trying to support everybody's First Amendment rights and what he's been doing.
Robert, I'm editing my tweet about holy hell, you just blew my mind about Pecker extorting Trump. Okay, and then we got the bond.
Turns out Pecker was really a pecker.
Pecker was really a dick, and Wiener was really a freaking pedophile. Okay. The bond case, what's going on with the bond? There's nothing really new going on with the...
Basically, the judge backed down on not going so far as trying to say the bond was illegitimate. And as I forecast, that despite, Engeron being Engeron, he wasn't going to go that far to embarrass the Court of Appeals. So the bond is fine. So that the attempts by the Attorney General to revoke the bond failed.
I didn't actually hear that. When did that happen?
This week. I just saw the headline and the basic story.
Okay, cool. Okay, so that's Trump. That's everything Trump, I think. Oh, by the way, how long does the Supreme Court have to issue a judgment on the immunity argument?
So they usually issue all of their decisions by June.
Oh, shitballs. That's a long time. What month is it? It's April, May.
We have 2 months. Sometime over the next 2 months, a decision will issue.
All right, and let me go back.
A lot of big decisions coming.
Yeah, no. Well, okay, now, and also tell me this: am I wrong in thinking that they basically already had their decisions written and they were asking their questions just to fine tune it?
Well, that's really always the case. So not with the Supreme Court, it won't be fully written. What they'll have is their opinions. But this is true for every court I've ever been in front of. They already have an opinion about 85% of the time. They already have an opinion, and their questions are leading questions to bolster their opinion.
Okay.
And that's why oral argument is often just for show. And when you do it, you often have to be prepared in case they're against you to try to find out what could I do to get them to reconsider and not take any trap questions. But that's always the case. But with the Supreme Court, there's no actual opinion because each of the justices has their own opinion, but then they got to come up with a majority opinion. So after oral argument, usually there's an assignment. There's a vote. And then based on the vote, Chief Justice Roberts assigns who's going to write the opinion. My guess is Roberts will write this opinion himself.
Okay. Very cool. So that's Trump.
The other things up before the Supreme Court this week, the big one, there was briefly one about abortion, about whether federal law can preempt it. And one of the good questions Thomas asked is, how do you preempt, and Alito, how do you have a federal law preempt state criminal law? So, but they may skip it all by calling the case moot. So it may not end up being a big decision, but the homeless rights issue could be.
Well, hold on a second. To the answer to the question as to how the Supreme Court can preempt a state law, how about if they just acknowledge that an unborn child has constitutional rights as of viability? How about if they just resolve it like that?
Yeah, they could. And their point was somehow the Biden administration is interpreting this law. This is how licensure is being used. Now funding is being used this way, saying you see it with all the trans stuff in Title IX. If you take our paycheck at any level, you take any money from us, we now get to control you. So you're an educational institution. You've got to teach people trans. You've got to adopt trans ideology, or it's illegal, and you can be sued into oblivion. Now they're using it with hospitals. Okay, Medicare, Medicaid. And by the way, I remember all my friends on the left who love government health care told me this was never going to happen. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of my friends on the right who think we should let big corporations run all our health care either, just for the record. But the people on the left were, the right complaint on the right was if you give government control over health care, they're going to abuse that power. And they're like, oh, no, that would never happen. It's just here to make sure people get their health care that can't otherwise afford it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this is exactly what they're doing. The Biden administration is taking a 1980s law and saying, because we give you funds, you doctors are forced to give abortions, even if it's against the criminal law of your own state, as it is here in Idaho. And one of the questions the justices was like, how is a Reagan statute that says nothing about abortion now being interpreted to mandate abortion? Right? That's how broad they're willing to stretch the power that they were, that they're getting under federal funding laws. So there could be some good limitations on the ability to use federal funding to control everybody, but they also may say the decision is moot because the Idaho Supreme Court came in and restricted the Idaho criminal law in such a way that there's really no conflict anymore between the federal law and the state law. But it could have big constitutional consequence, just like the homelessness case.
Okay, it's interesting. The funny thing is, I've been having debates on Twitter, and it seems that everybody agrees viability is the cutoff point, even if they don't want to say it publicly. Jason Palmer, another person, an Ontario teacher who I have discussions with, just constitutionally recognized as of viability, whatever scientifically that means, it's a human under the protection of the law and the Constitution, and you resolve a lot of issues. Then you're a separate subset of issues, which you can go for. Okay, interesting. Robert, I'm looking at the list.
Our next big one is the homelessness one for the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah. So
and then we got some ones we can cover in the after party at Viva Barnes Law.locals.com.
We'll go from
the other big potential one with ramifications based on the oral argument this week. We discussed it last week, but it's the update from what happened at oral argument.
So, and we'll go from the Pecker to the Wiener to the Weinstein in the after party. But I did not listen to the homelessness one. Was whether or not the ordinance that prohibited or criminalized, being on a park bench with nowhere to go at a certain hour of night was a crime, and whether or not you could effectively criminalize homelessness. I did not listen to those oral arguments.
Which means you could criminalize someone based on involuntary conduct. You could criminalize someone based on situation rather than something they intentionally created. And the question is, does the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishments prohibit that? Prohibit punishment for involuntary behavior? Prohibit criminal punishment for just your situation or status in life? And in the same way, or does the Fifth Amendment due process clause prohibit it? And that's why now the three liberals like the Eighth Amendment in this context, but they were afraid of where the other justices were going. So they were hoping to just remand and say it's all moot because Oregon's passed law to address certain subject matter. So they may, like in this case, they may try to do that escape valve. But to his credit, Kavanaugh and some others were like, there's some issues here. Do we want to constitute? Now, here's where some of the old school conservatives like Alito and Thomas have often not really been very good. They haven't been good at Fifth and Eighth Amendment interpretation of not criminalizing status. They haven't been consistent advocates, unfortunately, on that side of the aisle. And then, of course, you have Amy Coney Barrett, whose first question you could predict. It'd be, oh, but these homeless people are like so smelly. I mean, can't we just really just put them in prison for how they smell? That was the nature of her question, right? That's what you get when you get a corporate snob on the bench. It's like, no, let's not worry about the Constitution. I just don't like the look of them, was the nature of her argument. So she's not going to be any able advocate, but hopefully they do not undermine Fifth and Eighth Amendment rights in the name of punishing homeless people or dealing with the homelessness problem. That we should not. Our Constitution does indeed prohibit imprisoning people based on conduct that's not within their control, whether it's conditioned status or involuntary. Now, Gorsuch had a carve-out. Gorsuch's carve-out was, couldn't we constitutionally recognize the necessity defense? To say that the necessity defense is constitutionally embedded. And the necessity defense is a version of the justification defense I talked about in the Pennsylvania case. Basically, it says, look, I had a lesser of two evils that I chose to do, and it was the only thing I could do. It was necessary for me to behave in this manner. And in that context, I would be okay with that too, as long as he constitutionalizes it. Just saying it exists doesn't protect it because the courts could just take it away in the future. So how they decide this, the politics of the homelessness case is clouding the very big constitutional issues lurking in that case.
Okay, very interesting. Robert, hold on a second. I got to get back here to the list of stuff. So we got the the Arizona. Maybe we want to save that for the after party. Pure butter, backpack. What is that? Back pages verdict. I don't know what that is. Hunter. Yeah. Okay, let's actually end this because it'll tie it all off in a nice bow. Started off with immunity, or at least we got to immunity halfway through. We'll end with the immunity. Hunter Biden claiming immunity. For those of us who don't know what you're talking about or what Hunter Biden is claiming immunity for, I'm amenable to thinking about it. What is he claiming? Is it for the gun charges? Is it for
all of it? It's for the gun charges and the tax charges. But the basis is what we talked about at the time. That once the government signed a plea deal, that's a binding plea deal. And I agree with the legal position of Hunter Biden's lawyers.
Well, not you agree with it. You predicted it before they even raised it.
And I legally think it's correct. I disagreed with them giving him that deal, but I definitely disagree with the court saying, well, the government can just sign a plea deal with somebody and then ignore it and then violate it. I don't care whether it's Hunter Biden, Donald Trump, or anyone else. Michael Avenatti, you name it. The government, under the due process clause of the U.S. Constitution, is not only contractually obligated to keep their word, they're constitutionally obligated to keep their word. And they induced Hunter Biden to make statements against his interest in the name of that deal. And so just because it's Hunter Biden is no excuse at all to eviscerate the constitutional and contractual obligation of the United States government to keep its word. And so his motion to dismiss the gun charges and the tax charges should, in fact, be granted. They're making a ludicrous claim that the probation office had to sign off. That's never been the case as a matter of custom and practice, number one. And number two, it's not in the agreement. Nothing in the agreement says the probation office has to sign off or this is not valid until they do. So because Hunter Biden wouldn't have signed it if that was the case. So Hunter Biden is constitutionally correct, but they'll probably sit on that being the correct decision until after Election Day.
Okay. And that...
By the way, that's why they signed it in Delaware, because Delaware contract law governs. And it's more favorable to Hunter Biden.
Okay, before we head over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, let me see how many Rumble rants we are behind schedule on. T1990, I say deregulation needs to take place so people can start competing companies to corporations like Pfizer to Microsoft, and obviously requires getting government out of the way. Deregulation, I don't think most people would object to unless you are a Democrat or a liberal. The engaged few. You mean to tell me that the people whose religious traditions are based on a set of laws are heavily represented in the legal profession? Fetch my fainting couch and smelling. I've never thought about it that way, the engaged few. That's interesting. And I feel stupid now for actually have never thought about that way. Rusty Hollow, although what would explain the overrepresentation in an industry like film and porn that is not based on traditions or laws. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't thought about that long enough. Rusty Hollow. Grobert said it worked for the week. We've got that. Barb loves Alaska. Need to put a shock collar on Viva so every time he tries to interrupt Barnes, we can shock him. Just kidding, Viva. Heart. Don't worry, I didn't take that personally. Is there a place for fixers? WL French. Razorfist said it best: when it comes to Arizona, the corrupt people there will not give up the drug money and the California cash without a fight. It's interesting. Robert, do we take the rest of this party over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com?
Yeah, we got the Arizona criminal indictment for just contesting an election. We got Harvey Weinstein having his New York conviction thrown out.
Part of it.
We got back pages. Having a bunch of judicial acquittals concerning whether or not they were involved in human trafficking. And then we got when butter ain't butter, but they pretend it is butter, like most corporate food, and has a bunch of chemical crap in it instead.
Robert, there was one that just came in that I want to get. I'm not getting into any Jew discussion. I don't know why that is such a unpleasant conversation to have on the internet. Rybo says, "What is Barnes' take on rumors of Doug Burgum, ND North Dakota?"
He's one of the people being considered. Burgum's okay, but not great, not terrible. I mean, J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, Ben Carson, those would all be great choices. Those are the top 3 choices at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Tim Scott would be a horrendous choice. Kristi Noem would be a poor choice. Doug Burgum would be a meh choice.
Why is everyone ignoring my Vivek Ramaswamy? I like him, Robert, Tulsi Gabbard I like as well. But
I think Vivek would be a fun, interesting choice.
And not to play the identity politics game, he would be, check off the box so that you can say, well, it's not going to be a white male. Like J.D. Vance, they'll just say, oh, two white dudes running for the president. It'll be a very easy point of attack. I don't think like that. I hate it. I like J.D. Vance. He's amazing. He's proven himself above and beyond just words, but action.
And Lake would, of course, be great, but she's running for the Senate. I think that there's already a decision made that she is not going to be for VP consideration, is my understanding.
I like Kara Lake as well.
Okay,
well, we are ending on Rumble. vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I'll share the link one more time. We still got 20,000 people live here. If we can get all 20,000, by the way, before you leave, hit thumbs up and subscribe. Just make sure for that. Send the locals link, says Shofar. It's in the chat. Boom. Here, I'll do it one more time. Let's see. Oh, I see it now. I've gotten message out. It says you sent too many messages on Rumble. I'm just making sure we got everything. So come on over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to cover the tipped questions there, the after party, and it's going to be fun. If you're not coming, thank you for coming to Rumble. Stay tuned. Oh, I can't wait to go back to the Iron Rainbow and try to make people realize what Ronald Reagan said. Can he have said it, Robert? You know, you're never more than one generation away from extinction when it comes to freedom. I really blew his expression, but it's like, I can't believe he actually made that. Vivek is a snake in the grass, too much unknown. I disagree. Vivek has foreign loyalties. I disagree. Okay, it doesn't matter. We are all entitled to our opinions. I like mine better. What we're going to do now, everybody, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, ending it on Rumble. Thank you for being here. And that's it. Done. 3, 2, 1. Bada bing, bada boom. We are in the Locals after party, people. I'm going to go all the way back up to the top. Rusty Gus, we got that one. Idaho, there we got Taylor, we got that. Attar, Robert, have you heard of Van Jang? Doug the Leaf. No, okay, I'll read it just like I started, but we're going to do $5 and more so we don't get bogged down. Viva is the only way to meet you when you come back to Canada in the breakfast ticket. Viva is the only way to meet you when you come back to China is the breakfast ticket. Dude, I don't know. I'm not spending more time than I have to in Canada, so I'll be there. AM Drum. I understand Susan Wild may not be giving the best advice to Trump, but how can we as supporters communicate the error of this path? Tag Trump, family, friends, and allies. They'll get it. They're not in tune to it. So they're in there. Judy Hodgkiss. Here's Trump's pledge to investigate Big Pharma. Why not make sure that RFK is leading the commissions instead of pushing an operation that could very well reelect Joe Biden? And you got to
within Trump's control. I mean, this really is within Trump's control. Trump can decide the impact of the Kennedy campaign. He can either borrow those Kennedy issues that are popular with voters who are willing to consider him or Kennedy, or he can decide to boost Kennedy's campaign by making the vaccine the key issue of difference between them. This is entirely within Trump's control. And he's taken the bad advice to make the vaccine the top issue of difference between he and Kennedy.
He just needs to say what needs to be said. I was lied to. You were lied to. We were all damaged and hurt. And I will investigate it. And I will put RFK on that team. Bam! Presidency for Trump.
That's an easy math. Easy math.
Trump said he stood next to Johnson because of the one-man majority where Jeffries could end up speaker if MGT, that's MGT, pulled down Johnson. Your take?
Taylor Greene,
yeah.
I mean, he had different excuses for it at different times, but he had the same excuse for making Paul Ryan Speaker of the House, making help supporting Mitch McConnell to be leader of the Senate, for making sure Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, and Lindsey Graham were all elected to the United States Senate. He's had these excuses for a while, and at some point they get a little old. He needs to say why Donald Trump, screwed up, or at least quit continuing to screw up.
No, yeah, quit continuing to promote a screw up. I want to bring.
I mean, don't keep doing. And people are like, "Oh, you're judging him for 2020." No, I'm judging him for right now.
Well,
what 2020 right now is what's idiotic.
It's called what's it called? The Actus Novus. He's bringing back up 2020 in 2024.
And it's because they've convinced him that it's popular. I mean, 1776 Law Center is going to sponsor a survey by Richard Barris, People's Pundit, to test out this stuff, because I'm running into this outside of the Trump world. There's people who really believe nobody cares about food freedom. Nobody cares about medical freedom. Nobody cares about financial freedom. Nobody cares about Bitcoin or crypto. Nobody cares about lockdown. Nobody cares about vaccines. I think they're living in fantasy world, but I'm going to get Barris, who is the best pollster in America, to find out. Let's do a real opinion poll and see what happens. So, I am a betting person. I wouldn't bet on the side of assuming that there's nobody out there that cares about any of these issues. I think that's a foolish proposition.
Now we got Ginger Ninja, who put up another successful build for a disabled veteran, a home adapted for his disabilities due to an IED blast. The house is beautiful, and the location almost seems even more idyllic, like sheltered by the trees in the beautiful country air. Fantastic, Ginger Ninja. Amazing. I'm going to stop screen, bring this back up. Robert.
Unlike the house of what's her name that didn't exist, right? Hello, Blue.
Oh,
remember that?
Yes.
Remember, she was supposedly like raising money for a place and they couldn't find it.
I don't want to rehash controversy, Robert. Not that we'll agree to buy the piece. I do remember that. It's And whatever happened there, it doesn't
She's like
matter.
Disappeared, hasn't she? I haven't seen anything.
She's been very silent, but you know who's gonna probably have to disappear? He might just have to like take time off of Twitter. Is Justin Hart. I don't want to put him on blast anymore, but that's what I spent the day arguing with about the lectern guy actually having been charged with theft of government property because of the frickin' lectern. And I feel bad for jumping down people's throats, but my goodness, you have to make sure not to be stupid on the internet. Denise Antu, I was just recently introduced to Yandex web browser. It is life-changing. Information and search parameters Google will never let us have. I highly recommend it. Yandex, Yandex, not an ad because I've never heard of it before. Schnookums. Robert, may you get to speak before SCOTUS with the court recoding case. Could merge with Good Logic's efforts and the SCOTUS to force all the... Robert, do you have anything or do you have any reasonable prospects of getting in front of the SCOTUS anytime soon? Or like in terms of...
Well, we'll see. I mean, the Children's Health Defense is the latest effort because that's about, can anybody sue the FDA? When the FDA is the one lying to everybody and force-feeding this vaccine on little kids as young as 6 months old, including kids in foster care and other places. So they were effectively coerced to take it because of the government's lies. Can anybody sue about it? Can the organization that has spent tons of money rebutting those lies, can they sue or no? Or is the FDA above the law? And that's just really above the law. The president's above the law. No, they were following the law in finding him immune unless the Senate convicts. By contrast, the FDA, they're finding is above the law. They're not allowing anybody to sue them, even when they violate congressional commands and constitutional constraint. So that's our latest one. And I'll be filing this week, exclusive here, first people to find out. Tonight, I'll be working on a bunch of things. One of these days, I'll get a break. This has been brutal the last couple of weeks. In terms of just work. But is Owen Schroyer. I will be filing the petition for cert for Owen Schroyer about the illegalities that occurred in his criminal case. So both of those will be Supreme Court case opportunities. It's always the long shot to get SCOTUS to take up a case, but we'll see if maybe they will take up one of these.
Godspeed, fingers crossed. Tim Good says judges need to have USA DNA within and ties to the land. Mine goes back 500 years. I will say that mine goes back spiritually.
Mine goes back to the Plymouth Rock. So
it's wild.
And to the honorable tradition of dissent. Every Barnes voted no on the Constitution until it included the Bill of Rights. Well, and then they sent in the army and said, you got to behave. So it said, okay, never mind.
Well, and look, in fairness to me, I'm only second generation Canadian, so but I have the history of fleeing the tyranny, and I think it's been reinvigorated in my psyche. Tim Florida or Tim FL says, so what you said is exactly right. How did they miss that? Are they corrupt and not incompetent? Unfortunately, Tim, I don't know which story of the night this applies to, but I can appreciate it might apply to all of them. That
answer is always true for pretty much either one. And it's often both. It's often, sadly, both.
Schnookum says, with respect to SCOTUS and Trump, can't we compare it to the diplomatic immunity whose blanket can only be removed by the creator of the blanket defined as Congress in the Constitution? Yeah. Yep. Spam Ranger. Oh, I skipped.
Oh, by the way, that is a place they could also go. Two other places they could go. Thomas raised it one explicitly, and I think Alito or the other, or Kavanaugh raised the other one, which is they could say that unless the president is specifically included by Congress, that he's excluded from any criminal statute. They could also find that the special counsel does not have constitutional authority because only Thomas or they didn't consistently raise that amongst the majority of the justices. They probably won't, but you might see a concurring opinion suggesting that could be an additional path that Trump could pursue.
Okay. And now I'm all the way at the bottom now. I'm going to go back to the top. Would Trump consider RFK for Attorney General? I think he's uniquely qualified to help dismantle the deep state. That's from Dark Raven 8.
I mean, that's the smarter political path, is to be saying stuff like that, in my opinion. I don't think comparing himself to Kennedy on the vaccines is the smartest political path. There's plenty of areas where Trump disagrees with Kennedy that would have appealed to the voters that might be considering both of them. And like I gave an example where he used fracking translated into real economics on Saturday. It's like that was a good illustration of a way to make an effective contrast. By contrast, Talking about the vaccine and Robert Kennedy in the same name to contrast yourself as Trump is a complete disaster, in my opinion. So that but the much better path is to bring an alignment between the populist left and the populist right, not to reject the populist left, because that's going to handicap his campaign and handicap his presidency.
I'm replying now to Kyle Seraphin in respect of the woman in the Project Veritas video is now saying she's 19. And I'm saying, so she lied when she said she was 20. Why do you know more about her than she does? Oh, snap, crackle, and pop. Okay, let me go. There was a, no, don't close the window. Net just says, Viva, Grobert says Jews are overrepresented in Hollywood and hence all entertainment in the industry was as the industry was created in the 20s when anti-Jew bias was rampant in the East Coast, but LA was welcoming. That may or may not be the case, but then we can't say it's racist or anti-Semitic to say Jews are overrepresented in Hollywood. Then we agree on the fact, and now just draw your own conclusions. Then the subsidiary question is going to be, okay, we agree Jews are overrepresented in Hollywood. It's an undeniable fact. What do they and what does the community do with that power? If you use that power to be a Harvey Weinstein, to put out purveyors of what's the word I'm looking for? Perversion, then expect people to draw negative conclusions and don't blame them when they do. So this is a very long argument that we can have that I'll get called a self-hating Jew for.
Well, it's a good bridge into the Harvey Weinstein case.
So bring it on, Robert. Like, the whole point is everybody's saying he was acquitted, but the dude's going to spend the rest of his life in jail anyhow. It's an easy acquittal. It's sort of like a Derek Chauvin type acquittal. What was the basis of the overturning of that particular charge? That it was something about the confrontation clause, from what I understand, because I didn't pay attention to it.
Well, just as a piece of it, I mean, the core problem was this, that what's called prior bad acts. So when you're trying someone for a particular crime, there's a natural temptation by prosecutors to want to introduce evidence of prior bad acts. And the real thing is to say, hey, jury, this guy's a bad guy. Convict him of this particular crime because look at these other things he did that show he's a bad guy. So it's called propensity evidence. If he's committed a crime before, he probably committed this crime too. We know that evidence is untrustworthy and unreliable. And it creates trials within a trial because you end up having a trial on a case that's not actually on trial, the prior bad acts in this case. The only exclusions are things like motive, when the purpose of the evidence, it's kind of like hearsay. When the purpose of the evidence is not to introduce the truth of the statement, then it's not hearsay by law, which courts get wrong all the time. When the purpose of introducing a prior bad act has nothing to do with it being a prior bad act, but instead is about identity, motive, common scheme, pattern, then you can introduce it. But the common scheme can't be, he usually does criminal things, so he did criminal things here. That's what the common scheme can't be. But when they want to railroad somebody, that's what they do. And here, because Weinstein became persona non grata in the legal and political system, they just let everything in. And they let in all this evidence of prior bad acts that was clearly, hey, he does this all the time, so convict him on this. So believe these charges because he's done it to other people before. Exactly what the Constitution of New York and the United States prohibits. There are other issues in terms of being able to confront those witnesses in certain ways that give rise to confrontation clause issues and the like. But that was the main one. And it was a split 4-3 decision, which tells you how political the New York courts are. Because this was kind of obvious. It was always kind of obvious. But the three justices didn't want to approve overturning Harvey Weinstein's verdict when the evidence was obvious. And as you pointed out, he's in prison forever because of the California convictions anyway. Gives you a sense for how political our courts can be and where the New York courts are. But the decision was a legally and constitutionally correct decision.
Yeah, and it's inconsequential, but it made the headlines. And anyhow,
they want more expert evidence. They want more experts. From now on, they're like, hey, if you want to explain how assault victims might still be telling the truth despite their unusual conduct, such as continuing to date Harvey Weinstein and see him afterwards, which a lot of people are like, maybe this case wasn't necessarily the abuse case. Have an expert explain that that's how their psychology operates, but don't introduce prior bad acts in order to explain that.
The heck what is Robert? I've got a gray hair here. Here. How long has that been here for? That's terrible. The gray hair is straight while the rest of the hair is curly. That's gross. All right, so Harvey Weinstein will still spend the rest of his life in jail. Not that he, needed any. It's sort of like the Derek Chauvin overturning a portion of it to set a proper precedent of law, knowing that it's without consequence to the overall conviction. Robert, hold on. Bring it here. Viva, did you decide to go Beaumont for the Brooke Jackson case? Did you decide? Oh, that's right, because that's on Thursday. What are the details if we
Wednesday,
want to attend? Wednesday. What are the details, Robert? Is it going to be? There's no video. Is there audio?
Oh yeah, no. Federal court.
Cripe. I really want to. I think I might just not be able to. I won't say what my wife might do to me. How could it be?
We'll ultimately have probably oral argument with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals if we don't get a good outcome before the district court. So there'll be another opportunity, and maybe the Supreme Court of the United States will ultimately take it.
Texas is not that far away, Robert. I think I can maybe make this happen, like an in and out in the same day. How can it be private conduct when Trump is a politician representing constituents and it is our wishes that he contest the 2020 election? That's the easier part. But the spam ranger, but the
Arizona indictment.
But Robert, the broader question is, you're not a part-time president. Should there not be a presumptively all conduct is presidential, period?
Well, the way I would put it is, the decision about whether the conduct was presidential or personal
is up to Congress.
A decision for Congress to make in the impeachment process. Or as you put it, it's presumed presidential if he was president while the conduct occurred.
Yeah, and that would actually distinguish it a little bit from the Clinton precedent where he lied while president about conduct when he wasn't. That might be the critical distinction there. Okay. There was one more. Hold on one second here. We got Schnookums. With respect to SCOTUS and Trump, can't we compare it to the diplomatic? Okay, we got that. Okay. Oh, sorry, I had to go up. $10. So what you said is
some might suggest that Biden is setting this case up to establish immunity for Trump, so he has immunity himself.
Biden's. I was going to say something cynical. He's not going to live long enough for immunity to be a relevant factor. Tim, maybe for his kids. Tim, Florida.
Only if he loses. If he loses re-election, he might live longer.
Yeah, well, that's all he needs is a day plus a day and an hour. What you said is exactly right. How did they miss that? So I got all of this. I think we did it here. Let me scroll down to the bottom. P.S. Bates, maybe off topic, but 2 questions. I didn't hear asked or answered if the presidential immunity SCOTUS oral argument, 1, if treason, which carries the death penalty and is therefore logically worse than anything alleged against Trump in the D.C. January 6th case, requires impeachment and conviction before prosecution in normal courts. I would say yes, that's a high crime and misdemeanor. Yep. Why would the same not apply to lesser crimes? That's the obvious answer. If former presidents can be charged with crimes for personal private conduct once they leave office, why was Clinton not charged with perjury for life? Well, so because he struck a deal with the prosecutors right before he left?
No. The decision was made not to prosecute him.
That's even nice.
Because it has been generally assumed you shouldn't or can't until Trump.
Look at this one. Look at this straight gray hair. Like this right there. What the heck is this thing, Robert? I got gray. Okay. What do we have left on the menu for the summits of the evening?
Arizona, it's basically the same as Georgia and Michigan. If you contest an election, they're going to try to call it criminal fraud.
Oh,
same problem is that as a constitutional matter, it can't be. Petitioning for redress of grievances is protected. You can't criminalize it. And secondly, none of these people had the requisite criminal intent, mens rea, because they weren't out to commit fraud by submitting what they believed were the correct electors, who are simply the constitutionally permissible alternate electors in the tradition. As you pointed out, they should have referenced the Nixon and other prior examples of alternate electors being used. The reality is a lot of Trump's lawyers are not constitutionally deep on a lot of those topics, so they haven't always voiced the best way to approach it. But it's another bogus case, but it shows the constant, continuous weaponization of the political and legal processes against people's political opponents.
Hi, Robert. So
we have 2 other cases. You got Backpages. Backpages was set up as like the alternative to Craigslist. And what happened, so it was an online classifieds. That's it. Just online classifieds.
Hold on, stop. It's called Backpages?
That's what it's called, Backpages. Like the very back. So it used to be the old tabloid publications in the local communities. The Backpages where people had the classified ads. What they're making all their money from was people were escort services. And at some point, I don't know who they offended or why, but they became a major target of the federal government, who wanted to accuse them of human trafficking. And they were convicted by a jury, and there's all kinds of issues because all they were able to really prove is they knew they were making money from people who are using the escort ads for prostitution. And it's like, that isn't quite what the human trafficking laws were meant to. But the other interesting contradiction is you can't sue the other people, the big tech, for engaging in human trafficking, but you can criminally convict somebody for it. So, how all this works is going to be interesting. The judge came in and gave partial judicial acquittals, kept the rest. They're all facing life in prison at this point. But it'll be an interesting case to watch because of the First Amendment implications, when exactly this law is going to be applied. There's aspects of it I support, punishing people who knowingly profit from human trafficking. And then there's parts of where they're going, like, for example, are they saying everybody who does an escort service is a victim? It's like, okay, but human traffic, it's like the Tate case. Tate case is going to go to trial in Romania. It's like, we really need to limit human trafficking to actual human trafficking. Not say that every person who voluntarily engages in activity that they know of as an adult, as an escort, is necessarily a victim. Because there's this logic out there from both feminists and some religious conservatives that somehow you don't have cognitive consent capacity if you're an escort. It's like, well, come on. There's kind of a long history of people engaging in certain behavior. So and what it does is it diminishes the very real human trafficking that is taking place. We shouldn't be equating these things. We shouldn't be equating Harvey Weinstein and Andrew Tate if the facts aren't anywhere near analogous. We shouldn't be equating human trafficking because of somebody profiting off Backpage ads with the Albanian human trafficking operation. These are two things or the Sound of Freedom, that was what they documented and demonstrated there. I'm disturbed by this tendency to make these lines too thin.
No, it's an amazing thing. Like, sex work is real work, and also anyone who's a victim of sex work is a victim of human trafficking. It's a mutually incompatible political philosophy to uphold. By the way, Mandalici says $5. Obama should be impeached no matter what happens to Trump. I am inclined to agree, but I'm also inclined. Oh, impeached. Yes, sorry, I was reading indicted. Yeah, he should be impeached. Let them acquit Obama for extrajudicial assassinations of minor American citizens, because they were threats. But
or the way the Senate showed how they could have handled the Trump impeachments, but how they handled Mayorkas. Oh, we're just dismiss it. We're not going to allow a trial. Shows you how corrupt McConnell was, and those other senators that went along with that nonsense. And that's why Trump shouldn't be rewarding him now, but unfortunately he is at the moment. The one last case, another case involving the dangers of corporate food and how they're lying to you. The FDA allows people to sell pure Irish butter, even though it has forever chemicals in all the packaging of the butter.
Robert, do you know what other my wife Marion just sent this to me is Prime Energy, the grape drink, has forever chemicals in it and is being sued as well. And I'm like, now the question is this: are they suing because the forever chemicals end up in my body forever, or because they end up in the earth forever?
Both. I mean, but really it's because they end up in the earth back to your body.
Well, because I'm thinking, like, forever chemicals, they're going to come out of my body. They're not going to stay in here forever. So I expel them out.
It's
and
tied
then
to cancer, tied to developmental disabilities, tied to a wide range of disease.
Shit, because someone else in the chat. Someone else in the chat.
There's only one solution. But so somebody's suing, bringing class action, exposing it, and to the credit of, I think it was the New York State Court, said, yes, they could go forward. This is false advertising. This is unjust enrichment, which was good. But it's another example where the FDA is protecting the contamination of food while going after what the real alternative is. You know who doesn't have any forever chemicals in his food?
I'm going with Amos Miller, unpasteurized milk.
Amos Miller, organicfarm.com. That's where you can get real food.
I was going to say, you know what else doesn't have? Gray Whale gin, but it probably does have forever chemicals in it. Don't think like I don't drink Prime. I don't like it, but my kid likes it.
That's the best name,
Prime. Now that
Gray
you mention it,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It depends on where your brain goes.
Robert, there was one more chat in here in the Rumble Rants. It says LMDO. Hey, Robert, there's two actually. No, it's just one. Hey, Robert, for sports picks, what sports do you focus on, or are your favorites? And can you throw us a bone and give us one of your tips for the upcoming picks? Well, you have to go to sportspicks.com. What is it?
Sportspicks.locals.com.
If you pick right, I'll sign up. I could predict, Robert, darts. Like that would be my game to pick the winner. Although I have to catch up. Oh,
yeah. You know, there probably are betting markets out there somewhere on some like professional dart contests.
For sure.
There definitely is at your local bar. Usually there's people betting on that. But I mean, I like all the sports. Right now, we're doing what in America they know as soccer. There's a lot of soccer betting throughout the rest of the year. NBA playoffs have been very profitable. I think we're up 16-9 on our first 25 picks. Nice little profitable run. College football, pro football.
Do you do
college basketball,
UFC or no?
Huh?
UFC?
Yeah, only if I hear from someone that I know that understands UFC. I don't know it well enough generally to make betting predictions on it. Now and then I'll do baseball if I get around to figuring. I mean, I've done it and had success in the past, but last year I tried it and was unsuccessful. So, and then of course political betting. So, I mean, if Trump decides to keep hammering Kennedy on vaccines, I would bet Kennedy right now that Kennedy will probably go up
and that
in
would
the betting markets between now and election day.
Because you're betting on futures and not like a win or lose bet. So you can set.
That's exactly right. You're just betting on whether other people believe he has a better chance to win between now and election day.
Where do you do it? It's predicted?
Predicted in the States. There's also Bet US. There's also Polymarket, which you can fund through crypto. And then there's a bunch of international ones if you have access to them internationally.
Oh shit!
So there's always some fun things to. Occasionally, I'll do horse race. I think Kentucky Derby was today, wasn't it?
I don't know, but
next week maybe.
I'm going to predicted.com right now, and I'm setting up an account because I didn't realize the last time I checked Predicted, I was in Canada and I couldn't get it.
I mean, I gave out. Well, there are other places you could bet in Canada on presidential elections. But I gave out Ben Carson way back, and he's going up in the betting markets for VP. But yeah, I put out picks. We put out about 1,000 picks a year at least, sometimes 2,000 picks. So that basically people pay 10 cents, 25 cents a pick, and we've had profit now 3 years in a row. So and it helps and enhance your understanding of the sport. I do master classes explaining not just sports betting, but explaining these sports. So you have a better aesthetic enjoyment, more entertainment options in doing it. For me, it's good because it absorbs my brain. So I'm able to check out and just get absorbed in the moment of the sport and not having my brain keep going on a particular case.
That I have yet to figure out as well. But we got, will the late May event in Florida be an event with tickets available like a meetup? Keep up the great work. That's F. Sterling 91. Is that about the...
That's probably the Rebel Capitalist Pro.
Yeah, in Orlando.
Right? I mean, we'll be there for part of it, but that's George Gammon, Rebel Capitalist Pro.
And maybe we can figure something out, actually, once we're going to be up there. We can go to Gatorland together.
It's usually cool, by the way. He has always a lot of interesting economic speakers, and then there's a lot of interesting people to meet there. So so I'll be there for the whole shebang, probably.
All right, Robert. Now, not that I'm going to ask for the link for tomorrow's hearing, because I would love to see this.
I think it's currently sealed in private still.
Son of a beastie. Well, I'll follow up with you right after.
The court is considering unsealing, which is good.
Okay, so I'll message you tomorrow. Maybe I can either partake in or at least catch up immediately after and put out a vlog. Robert, we've done it again. Let me see here. I've gotten everything. So stick around, Robert. We'll say our proper goodbyes afterwards. Everyone in locals, you know what we're up to this week. It's going to be a good, massive, big week from content on my end to law on Robert's end. Keep up the faith and keep on keeping on, people. Peace out.